it to their mother upon their return to the rock. Daeron was grinning when it was over. "You'd make a wonderful bard, Oberyn, with such ribald tales." "Really?" Elia asked, turning to her brother. "I always thought he'd be more fitting as the fool." She winked at him. Her jest earning laughs from Daeron and Minor. Even Prince Doran's usual stoic demeanor cracked at his sister's mirth, chuckling along. Oberyn paid her insult no mind. "My sweet sister, always so supportive of me." That ensued into familiar bickering as the prince and princess traded harmless japes back and forth. Prince Doran looked on, more resigned than surprised at the antics of his younger siblings. However, his eyes held nothing but affection for them while watching the interplay between them. This night, knowing the truth had Jaime more observant to the behavior of the secret paramours. He watched and scrutinized their words and movements, trying to detect any sort of fondness or passion they allegedly had for one another. They were friendly but not overtly so, polite to one another, with innocent exchanges that followed. It appeared they seemed more disinterested, choosing to have conversations with those around them instead of each other. It seemed so telling now to Jaime, but he was looking for it. When it hadn't raised his suspicion or caught his interest. It was a subtleness to it that didn't cause the person's attention to linger on the indifference they showed one another. This was Cersei's unexpected rival. He studied the Lady Tyrell in a new light. She was wearing a green sleeveless dress that showed glimpses of skin that had once been pale, that had now begun to tan under the sun. Golden embroidery weaved throughout her dress. She wore a chain around her neck with golden rose petals. Her hair was brown and dangled loosely around her face. He must have been staring too long, for his gaze didn't go unnoticed. Minor turned his way, her bright blue eyes were on him. "Tell me, Jaime, the prince mentioned you sparred the day before." The prince, before he knew, he would have thought she was referring to Oberyn, but now he couldn't be sure. "We did," he confirmed, realizing other conversations were dying down as more heads were turning towards him and Lady Minor. "How did you fare?" "He won," Tyrion answered enthusiastically, much to the amusement of those around the table. "The first one, he did." Daeron smiled towards Tyrion, "but I bested him the next two." "And the last one, Prince?" Jaime couldn't resist. It was inconclusive. Jaime snorted, "That's what you call a defeat?" Daeron shrugged, "The perks of being a royal prince, my friend." Indeed, Jaime chuckled, and he wasn't alone in the mirth as it rippled up and down the table. In laughing with the prince, Jaime didn't need to think about secrets and schemes. He could just enjoy the friendship even if the feeling felt fleeting. Notes. I'm aware of Oberyn's past and how she chose /joined Oberyn at an older age than this fic portrays. This is a liberty on my part, so hopefully it doesn't bother you too much. Also, another reminder, ages have been altered to better fit this story. I know I said in the chapter before that we'd get Rulla's reaction to her son's duel, but I didn't like any of the ideas that came from it, so in the end I decided to table it and move forward with the story. Once I did, I found the chapter easier to write. We'll get her thoughts / reactions through future reflections and flashbacks. I hope no one minds. Thank you for your patience and support. Spectre for Hire. Chapter 13, Paramore. Notes. I would like to thank RJG, Zanil Neko, and Point Given for taking the time to leave a comment. I appreciate it. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter text. 279 AC. Daeron. To Mace Tyrell. I'm writing to inform you that I've. Daeron stopped when he heard a sound. He looked over his shoulder to see Minor was readjusting under the blankets of the bed, but still looked to be asleep. He couldn't help but smile as he admired her form. Even after all these mornings together, he still couldn't get used to this sight. Satisfied that she wouldn't wake, Daeron turned his attention back to the letter he tried to draft. This was not his first attempt. He had lost count at how many he had begun these past few days. Even now in the early morning light, he wasn't certain of this approach. He cared for her, but they had agreed not to seek a betrothal between them. However, circumstances were beginning to creep up towards him now that he was so near to his 10 and 6 name day. Families were approaching and inquiring about his marital status as if just discovering his existence now that his older brother was married. Daeron was nearly a man grown who'd be able to make his own choice, but until then that responsibility rested in his father's hands. He was no fool in thinking that once he was a man grown that he'd be free to choose who he wished to marry. He knew he needed the crown's blessing. He knew that he'd be used as a pawn to further his father's plans regardless of Daeron's age or consent. I am chained to the schemes and caged in the plots of my family and the crown. It was with these disquieting thoughts and revelations that urged him to consider putting aside his agreement with Mina and seek her hand in marriage. A selfish solution, he knew, but one that became more tempting the longer he remained unattached and the target of Famile's ambitions. Wasn't it better to marry a friend than a stranger? He turned back to his letter to the Lord of Highgarden and Mina's brother, Mace Tyrell. To Mace Tyrell. I'm writing to inform you that I've grown fond of your sister in the short time I've come to know her during her unexpected visit to Sunspear. That is why I find myself writing to you to broach the subject of a possible betrothal between myself and your lovely sister, the Lady Mina Tyrell. He read it over, and when he finished, he rolled it up but he put it into the flickering flame of the candle that was beside him. While he watched it burn, he imagined the answer her brother would have given, but then he heard the answer she'd tell him. It was a disappointment he didn't want to confront, so he enjoyed it for what it was, a distraction. Morning, she stirred from her sleep. Morning, he replied in turn, his eyes on the flame that burned away any evidence of his momentary weakness and lapse of judgment. Satisfied that it was gone, he turned to see she was sitting up. Her honey curls were a dangling mess falling over her face. Her silk shift was a pale green that seemed to only accentuate her curves. She took a vial that had been in one of the drawers by her nightstand, opening it and drinking its contents in a one sip. When she emptied it, her eyes found him. Even the early morning couldn't dim the light in her laughing blue eyes. To prevent any black fears, she quipped, putting away the vial. Are you hungry? I have other thoughts for sating my appetite, she purred when she reached him. Her breath tickled his ear, her sultry tone stirring Daeron's own hunger. She then leaned over him, aware of how her body touched his as she grabbed an apple from the bowl. It was tempting. His body was already betraying him, reacting to her beauty and her touches. However, he knew he shouldn't, he couldn't. Daeron had to return to his chambers before the servants or his guards discovered he wasn't there. Before he could give her a proper reply, she spoke again. What is it that you were doing? The change in her tone caused him to frown. He looked to see her alert blue eyes were looking down at the scraps of parchment he had spread out before him. I was writing. To who? The suspicion in her voice was palpable. In the heartbeat of silence that it took him to answer, he debated on whether to lie or not before settling on the truth. Your brother. My brother, she repeated. Dismay flickered across her expression. You were writing to him about a betrothal. It was an accusation. I was. Daeron stood up. I didn't send it. He noticed how she went tense and stiff at the revelation. I have not forgotten our agreement. That seemed to placate some of her temper that looked to be storming behind her blue eyes. Then why did you write it? Because if I am to be wed, then I'd rather be wed to you than some stranger. Do you think we'd be happy? Yes. She smiled at him, but it was a sad smile. Her eyes shone with sympathy. We wouldn't, she said softly. My brother would poison what we have, what we cherish. She took his hand in hers. Don't you see what you'd be to him? You'd be his prized possession. His dragon on display. How he'd love to parade you out at feasts and tourneys so that all the lords could see you. You'd be no better than those dancing bears that the small folk love so much. Her lips curled in disgust at what she envisioned for them. Soon, my brother's ambition wouldn't be sated with just having a good brother as a Targaryen. No, he'd turn to our children and wonder at how they'd look upon the Iron Throne instead of Rhaegar's. She shook her head, eyes wet with tears. I love my brother, but I care too much for you to let my brother's ambition reach us. She bowed her head. You deserve better than that, my prince. Daeron mulled her words in silence, finding it difficult to poke past her reasoning. He didn't know Lord Tyrell, so how could he argue against his own sister when it came to knowing the man's heart and intentions? I understand. He wasn't sure what else to say, and those words alone tasted just as bitter as the rejection he just faced. I'm sorry. She ran her hand over his cheek, blue eyes glistening, before she turned away and took a breath to compose herself. This day has not been kind to you, my prince, she said softly, and it's only just begun. Her laugh that followed sounded more a hiccup than a chuckle. It started well enough, he assured her, his hands resting on her hips as her back remained to him. She laughed, and this time it pealed with mirth, and when she looked over her shoulder, there was no trace of tears. Her eyes shined and her lips formed that impish smirk which he enjoyed so much. "How did it start again, my prince?" He smiled at her mischievous tone. "I'll show you. Your friend knows." Daeron looked up from his meal, not entirely surprised to see Lady Mina had invited herself into his chambers. She was standing where the discreet entryway was. Oberyn had given them rooms where it'd be easy for them to slip back and forth without guards or chaperones being any wiser. He had just returned from the training yard after a tiring morning routine with Segwayne. "Please, join me," he stood up to greet her. "It isn't much. I only told them to prepare for one." It was a light course of fruit and bread with some wine. "Thank you," she flashed him a smile as she moved to sit across from him. "Did you tell your friend?" "I didn't." It had been a challenge not to tell Jaime, but Daeron thought it the wisest choice. "He was staring at me the whole night." She popped a grape into her mouth. "Mayhaps, he was mesmerized by your beauty," Daeron offered. "In front of his betrothed?" She challenged, but the playful smile on her lips revealed that she was flattered by his words. The lion would never shy away from his princess. Daeron chuckled, agreeing with her observation. "I shall speak with him." He hoped Jaime would understand. "To see if you are right," he added when he noticed she was about to object. "I am right," she said pointedly, but the teasing hue in her eyes belied her tone. "Of course, my lady," he bowed, feigning deference which earned a laugh from his paramour. The mirth didn't last. Her smile dipped and her eyes lost some of the spark that had just been present. "I fear I need to tell you something, my prince." Her tone was somber. "I am leaving for Highgarden in a few days." Daeron frowned. He knew they couldn't hide away in Dorne forever despite the temptations. "I expected as much." "It isn't that, my prince." Her soft solemn words broke through. "I received a raven from my brother this morning. I am betrothed." The strawberry that had been in his hand had been instinctively crushed. "I see." He wiped away the residue of the crushed fruit from his hands and table. "We knew this day would come." He struggled to maintain his stoicism at this reeling revelation. "We did." Her voice was tight. He looked anywhere but her. Daeron worried how his will would crumple if he was to look upon her. He busied himself with his meal, cutting up bread. "Is it a good match?" His throat felt as dry as the Dornish desert. "It's Lord Paxter Redwyne." "That is a very good match," he observed. Paxter Redwyne was the lord of the Ubber. He controlled the largest fleet in Westeros and their wines made the family one of the wealthiest in the Seven Kingdoms. "It is," she repeated quietly. "I wish you and your groom nothing but good fortune and happiness. Look at me." He wanted to refuse her request. He should have demanded that she leave, but he didn't. He looked to see her face wrought with concern. "Do not be so formal with me." There was a pleading look in her blue eyes. "You are betrothed. It would be improper." "You sound as if I came into your bed a blushing maiden." She laughed at that. "We cannot undo what we did, nor would I choose to," she admitted. "I doubt he'll expect the sheets to be read." "And if he does?" She shrugged, undeterred. "I've been riding for years." Her lips curved into an impish smile when she added, "But only recently has it been dragons." Daeron laughed at her boldness. He found his anger fleeting in the face of her beauty, in the allure of her company. Despite his thoughts of her newly announced betrothal, he couldn't deny his own more selfish and base feelings that were louder than all the others. He couldn't turn her away with her remaining time being so brief. So it was to his primal needs he gave into instead of the polished ones expected from a prince. "Jaime. Are you watching, Uncle Jaime?" "I am," he assured his future nieces. They were running and playing in a nearby fountain with Tyrion between them. He chuckled when Arianne and Oberyn began performing some sort of spinning contest with Tyrion clumsily trying to stay out of their way, while still remaining close. It was a beautiful palace with lush gardens and sprawling pools and fountains that served as a private retreat to House Martell. He had forgotten in his lessons from Maester Desmond why or who built it, but he was thankful for it all the same. In the weeks that followed since he arrived, he walked every pink marble path, visited every garden, hid under any shade he could find to escape the sun, as well as taking his brother to every pool and fountain they could find. "My lion is bronzing." Elia appeared beside him, her delicate fingers touching his cheek. Princess, he took her hand and placed a kiss upon her knuckles. His eyes never leaving hers, dark pools that shimmered with longing. He felt his own desires flaring within, hotter than the dawnish sun, but he couldn't forget just how close they were to their nieces. It was then that he spotted Prince Daeron walking through the gardens on a path towards them. Segwayne Gaunt walked behind him, the prince's sworn shield, and the only member of the King's Guard who accompanied him to Dawn. "Come." Elia looped her arm through Jaime's, "let us give your friend some company." Jaime didn't object. Escorting her towards Prince Daeron Targaryen, who smiled at them as they approached. "Princess," he kissed her cheek, "my friend is fortunate to have such a beauty all to himself." "Indeed, I am," Jaime happily agreed, bowing his head to his friend. "We just need to find a proper betrothed for you," my prince, Elia offered sincerely. "While also shielding you from all the improper ones." "My prince, princess," a new voice broke through their conversation. "Impressive timing," Jaime mused, as the Lady Minor approached them. Despite her surprised look and hesitance to join them, he doubted that this was truly a random encounter. It was Elia who greeted her first, with a welcoming smile. "Lady Minor, this is a surprise." Minor returned the smile. "I was looking for your brother, princess," she said. "He promised to show me the water gardens." "My brother departed this morning." Elia was apologetic in explaining Oberyn's absence. "He rode to Sunspear to feast Lord Euronwood before escorting him here, where my brother will host him for a few days." She looked surprised at the news. "Forgive me," she bowed her head, "I'll be on my way." "Nonsense." Elia dismissed that suggestion. "I'd be a poor host to let you stay in your chambers alone." Minor showed her gratitude with a smile. "You have my thanks, princess." "Prince Daeron, would you be my escort?" Elia moved to stand beside the royal prince, "that is if Segwayne permits it." A smile bloomed beneath the knight's bushy mustache. "I do, princess." Jaime hid his frown upon knowing what that meant for him. Instead of walking the water gardens with his lovely betrothed, he now was tasked with escorting a stranger. He knew Elia took Daeron so no gossip could begin about the prince and Lady Minor. However, that didn't mean Jaime had to like it. "My lady," he offered his arm to her. "My thanks." She put her hand on his as they set off together. They walked a circular path that would allow them to keep an eye on the children, who were happily distracted playing in the fountains with one another. He kept his attention on the back of the prince's head instead of the lady beside him. Jaime strained to hear their conversation, especially when it prompted laughter from his betrothed. "Your brother is quite clever." "He is. He mentioned several of my ancestors, and I'd wager he knows more about them than my own brother, the Lord of Highgarden." Minor laughed, a light lilt that held more warmth than Jaime expected. Jaime found himself smiling. "Tyrion enjoys reading." "Yes, he mentioned that." Minor sounded amused. "He also mentioned that your sister is coming to Dawn." The suddenness and the boldness of her words made Jaime nearly stumble, but he regained his composure, believing he let nothing slip past. "She is." He had told Tyrion a day or so ago to try to soften the ache that the inevitable departure would have on him. It seemed Minor had wormed the truth out of his brother, and that image angered Jaime more than he could say. Curious. Minor's voice carried a cadence to it that Jaime couldn't quite place the meaning behind. "Is it?" He shrugged. Jaime knew he needed to be careful. He was speaking to the prince's paramour. She would be Cersei's rival to any potential betrothal between his friend and his sister. Minor already had the advantage of sharing the prince's bed. "She is betrothed, isn't she?" Minor asked politely. "She isn't," Jaime corrected, looking towards her for the first time. She looked back at him, a veneer of primness while her eyes sparkled as if to display her honest intentions. He wasn't fooled for a second, especially as she tried to feign innocence when it came to his sister and her marital prospects. "Really? She sounded as innocent as a back alley whore." "Is it any concern of yours, my lady?" Jaime couldn't stop the brusqueness from seeping into his question. The anger of her deceiving Tyrion, a boy who starved for affection and used that to get information out of him, caused his blood to boil. "Did I pull the lion's tail?" She laughed, because that sounded like a roar. She detected his irritation but found it amusing instead of worrying. "My apologies," he lied. His voice was tight, betraying his lingering annoyance. "I'm just protective of my sister." She patted his arm. "I wish my brother had that same trait." For the first time in their conversation, Jamie detected an authentic feeling in her voice, and it was bitterness. "Does your family hope to make a match with the prince?" Her question came as softly as a whisper. "My sister is here to retrieve my brother, nothing more." He would give her nothing. "So she is." Jamie's anger swelled in his chest at her insistence. "If you're so concerned with the prince, maybe you should speak to your brother." He took satisfaction at seeing his words puncture through the facade she had skillfully kept up. "I am already spoken for." Her expression revealed neither happiness nor sullenness at her fate. That surprised him. Jamie's eyes instinctively going towards his friend. She seemed to read his mind. He already knows. Jamie wasn't sure what to say, so he kept quiet, mulling over this unexpected revelation. "You should be rejoicing, my lord," she judged his silence for plotting. "Your family has a clear path to him." Her smile was thin when his eyes met hers, a challenging hue as if daring him to say otherwise. He wanted to rebuke her accusation, but he couldn't. There was a note of truth in her judgment, and he despised himself for it. Prince Daeron and Princess Elia had stopped, admiring the view of the sprawling gardens and fountains before them. The pair oblivious to what Jamie and Mina had been discussing. "My ancestor was fortunate to have Prince Maron gift her something so beautiful as these gardens. Some of my fondest memories are playing in these gardens as a child with my brother," Elia revealed wistfully. "Our children shall enjoy these gardens too." Princess Jamie put his arm around her. His words caused her to smile warmly up at him. "Our children," she repeated fondly. "I like that." He kissed her forehead, holding her close. If only all women were as blessed as the princesses Daenerys and Elia when it came to their future husbands and their compassion for their prospective brides. Mina's blue eyes showed them nothing when she looked at them. "Thank you for your hospitality, Princess Elia, but if you'll excuse me, I shall retire." She left without another word or look in their direction. Jamie glanced over to his friend. Prince Daeron stood silently, his eyes betraying his heart as they lingered on her retreating form. "Sir Gawain." "Yes, my prince." Daeron turned to the knight. His face stoic. "I believe it is time for our sparring." "Of course, my prince." Sir Gawain moved to stand beside him. "And try to make it a challenge this time," Daeron added, a smile slipping onto his lips. "I suppose I can humble you, my prince, as well as protect you." Daeron laughed. "That is why you are a knight of the Kingsguard, sir." He then turned to them. "Thank you for the tour of the gardens, princess." "It was my pleasure." He nodded in her direction before turning to Jamie. "Can I count on your appearance in the yard later?" "You can, my friend." Jamie bowed his head. Daeron smiled. He then left the water gardens with Sir Gawain at his side. "Love can be cruel," Elia murmured softly. Jamie didn't have any wise words to add, so instead he wrapped his arm around his betrothed. It proved the right choice as she leaned into him. He savored that feeling of her body against his, and he pressed a kiss into her hair. They stood there quietly, and he found himself thankful that he didn't have to sneak around to be with the woman that he loved. "I know." Jamie was too sore and tired to be anything but blunt. However, he had been smart enough to wait to speak until after he and Prince Daeron were in the latter's chambers. They had sparred for what felt like hours, and the hot Dornish sun had been merciless. By the end, Jamie could barely hold his sword. He had lost count how many fights they had had and how many had been won or lost. He collapsed into a nearby chair, thankful to be out of the heat. There was no denial from the prince. Nor was there an attempt to see what it was Jamie was referring to. He handed Jamie a glass before taking a seat across him. "Princess Elia told you." "She did," Jamie confirmed. "I wish it had been you," he wanted to add, but he kept silent. He took a long sip of his wine, thankful for the cool and soothing taste as it went down smoothly. "You must think me a bad friend." That thought stayed for a time. Jamie was honest. Daeron smiled, a soft chuckle followed. "I am sorry. I did not think it wise to share." "You told Oberyn." It came out more as an accusation than what Jamie intended. "He got me drunk." Daeron shrugged when he saw Jamie's incredulous look. The prince then took a sip of his Dornish red. "That was how he found out, and when he did, he sent out the invitation. I told him not to, but he wouldn't listen." Daeron's tone was filled with appreciation even when he tried to convey his disapproval. "Does her family know?" No, Daeron answered quickly, no one knows save for you, Elia, and Oberyn. He looked down at his glass, and I suspect Prince Doran too. He hasn't said anything, but he is very smart and very observant. Will you seek a betrothal? No, there wasn't sadness in the prince's tone, just resignation. This isn't for our families, but for us. He revealed, there's a certain bliss in the selfishness of it. It being a secret only makes it more enjoyable. He winked at him, smirking as he did. Jaime grinned, but held up his hands, that I don't need to know. Daeron laughed, but the mirth didn't last. He sobered after only a few heartbeats. Besides all that, I'm not a very ideal match. You're a prince. Jaime sounded stupid, pointing out the obvious. With no lands and a hollow title, he laughed. This time there was no joy, only bitterness. All of what I get is due to the generosity of my father, and after him it'll be my brother, Rhaegar. He made a face showing he didn't expect much of his situation. She should be a lady of an important castle. With me all she can be is a princess of a hedge, he admitted sourly. That is all I am. You're more than that. Jaime wouldn't let his friend dwell on such melancholy thoughts. Thank you. Daeron finished his glass, standing up when he did and moved over to get some more. I heard about her betrothal. Jaime watched his friend stiffen. His back was facing him, and the prince poured himself another generous amount of wine. It is a good match for a second daughter. Daeron didn't make to join Jaime back at his seat. Instead he remained standing, drinking as he did. He placed his glass on the table, the clang of it announcing that it had been emptied. Are you still? Jaime struggled with how best to ask the delicate question. Fucking her. Daeron looked over his shoulder towards him. His smile was sharp and there was a certain glint in his lilac eyes. I am. Even though she's now betrothed, Jaime tried his best not to sound judgmental. Don't worry, it's not as if I'm not going to run away with her. That thought hadn't crossed my mind. Jaime stood from his seat, ignoring the protesting soreness of his legs. I'm just enjoying the offered fruit before it's sold and delivered. Jaime snorted at that description. It sounds so charming and irresistible when you put it that way. Daeron chuckled, pouring Jaime another glass of the strong wine. He nodded his thanks to the prince while also noticing that Daeron had poured himself another glass of the Dornish red. Jaime nursed his silently. The second glass tasted better than the first, sweet and cool as it went down. Have you heard at all from Ned? No. Jaime was thrown by the unexpected question. Have you? He saw his friend's posture change. He stood more rigid and the grip of his glass tightened. No, I have not. He drank the rest of his newly refilled glass quietly. When he finished, he dispelled a breath, and put the cup down. I feared as much. It was more the tone of his friend's statement than the words itself that caught Jaime's interest. What do you mean? I did not ask for it because I do not want it. It first came to me from my mother, and I prayed it was a rumor and nothing more, but the silence out of Starfall condemns me to the truth. Truth? What truth? He was taken aback by the prince's flustered tone. Lord Dane is pursuing a betrothal between myself and his sister, Ashura. Notes. To those who've supported this story by dropping a comment, thank you. To those who don't, I ask that you please reconsider. It would mean a lot to me. Spectre for Hire. Chapter 14, Challenge. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. 279 AC. Jaime. Betrothed. The next morning Jaime found him in Elia's chambers where they broke their fast together. They were usually accompanied by Tyrion, but his little brother was still asleep, and Jaime thought with a topic this sensitive it was better to let him sleep a bit longer. It is not official, Jaime clarified, but it appears Lord Dane was approached about a possible betrothal between Lady Ashura and Prince Daeron. They had a light spread before them of various fruits including grapes and oranges, some cooked eggs with bacon and baked flatbread. Elia sat across from him, looking radiant even in the early morning. She dressed in orange silks that clung to her body in a way that had Jaime on more than one occasion miss his mouth with his food due to distraction. She had only laughed and shook her head when she caught him. She had put a little bit of everything onto her plate, but now it seemed forgotten after telling her what Prince Daeron had told him. No wonder there has been no word from Starfall, she said sympathetically, clearly hurt for the friend she loved so dearly. He will rebuff Ned in favor of this promise. Jaime nodded. That is what the prince fears. They are not the only ones. Jaime had wanted to say it last night. However, like a coward he cloaked himself in silence. Jaime. Elia's eyebrows furrowed in concern. You're quiet. It is nothing, my princess. He didn't want to sully her hands with his family's scheming. That did not placate her. I'll be the Lady of the Rock someday, she pointed out. Your secrets should be mine. Your burdens should be mine. Jaime looked to see the seriousness in her features, the pleading hue in her eyes to allow him to open up to her, to trust her. In seeing her before him, he found his resolve cracking. Lord Dane is not the only one who is pursuing a match for Prince Daeron. Aurelia's face softened. Your father wants one between him and his daughter. Jaime gave a tight nod. He felt relief wash over him now that he unburdened himself with that secret. The guilt had been gnawing away at his insides like a vicious beast. You are too harsh on yourself. She stood up and made her way to his side of the table. You are a good man, she told him, cupping his face between her hands. And a good friend, she assured him. Please do not forget that. I won't. He found himself lost in her golden eyes, shimmering with adoration. What did I do to deserve you? He wondered, finding himself thankful for the Dornish princess before him, who would soon be his wife. Good, she smiled. You are not alone in this, my love, she reminded him. We are one. She kissed his brow. And we will make sure this betrothal is made. What? Jaime hadn't expected that. Yes, she looked amused by his reaction. I am not fooled by this betrothal between House Dane and the Iron Throne. I understand what it is, and I will inform my brother of its plot too. It is not accidental. You will help my sister. My family. Jaime knew that if the roles were reversed, his sister would not reciprocate this generosity. She would sneer, and mock, perceiving asking for help as a weakness. You forget, they will be my family too. They do not deserve you, Jaime wanted to say. How shall we move forward? Realizing it was better to listen to her counsel than trying to take the lead. Shall I say something to the prince? Not yet. Elia shook her head. We should be honest, since it does us no favors to lie to him. Jaime knew she spoke truly, but it didn't mean that he wasn't disappointed. He was hoping the time of keeping this secret from his closest friend was at an end. It will not be forever. Jaime. Elia seemed to sense his conflict. Only a short while, but knowing the prince, he would agree to it in a heartbeat if it meant no to the Dane betrothal. Then isn't in our best interest to tell him? Jaime frowned. No, because Prince Daeron cannot decide who he will marry, she answered patiently. If word leaked of this possible betrothal between your families, then whomever is pushing the Dane arrangement will tirelessly work to see theirs through, she explained. We must let them believe they have time. Lull them into a sense of complacency, and then we strike. Very well, Jaime agreed, impressed by her, and said as much. She took his praise with a bright smile. You forget that I've been taught by my mother and Prince Doran. Jaime wouldn't allow her to deflect the compliment completely. My family will be thankful, and the Westerlands will prosper by having you as their future Lady of the Rock. Oh. There was a teasing lilt that he found intoxicating with her exotic accent. And what of you? Will you be thankful too? Especially me, he grinned, realizing how close their faces were. His eyes flickering to her lips, which were curved into an impish smile. Show me. It was an outrage. The Lord of Storm's End paced, muttering curses and protests of Lord Dane's declining of the proposed betrothal between his friend and Lord Dane's sister, the Lady Ashura. Ned had barely spoke of the trip. This allowed Robert to retell their story of their time in Starfall. He tried to add a few embellishments to it to paint an unflattering view of Lord Dane. Those had been the only times Ned had spoken, and he did so only to correct his friend. Jaime glanced over at the prince, to see he remained quiet. He hadn't even flinched at Robert's rage, which was an impressive feat unto itself. Especially when Robert mentioned his warhammer and using it on the suitor so as Ned could marry Ashura. How can you be so calm about this, Ned? Robert demanded, who had spoken and acted as if he was the slighted party and not his friend. Lord Dane has his reasons. Ned's tone didn't betray the bitterness of a spurned suitor. She is his only sister and means to forge alliances. He frowned, conveying his opinion on how the woman he cared for was viewed as, I am after all, only a second son, he sighed. Hardly a prized alliance. Bullshit, Robert dismissed. You're the finest man I know, he clapped Ned on the back. My apologies to current company. Jamie waved it off. No, for once you may be right, Robert. My cousin speaks true, Ned Daron added his thoughts. Boosted by their words, Robert continued, and if it's land you need, I'm the Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. He thumped his chest with his closed fist. I can grant you land. His blue eyes shining at his promise, and if no good land can be found, then I'll just kick someone out of their castle and give it to you. Robert Ned sounded torn between exasperation and amusement. Only a jest, Ned. Robert looked pleased with himself at having to finally get him to smile. Thank you. Ned made no attempt at accepting or declining the generous offer. Jamie felt compelled to speak too. To offer land as well if needed to help Ned strengthen his chances with Lady Ashura, but he was not the Lord of Casterly Rock. I cannot give you land, he thought, but after talking with Elia, he was hopeful that he could do better, ensure his friend could marry his Dornish love. Were you able to see her at all? Jamie knew the distance between them was difficult for the second son of Lord Stark to deal with. I did. Ned's face softened. She was as lovely as ever. Robert smiled. She was. He held up his hands when Ned turned to him, laughing as he did. Peace, Ned, you know I would never. That was when Prince Daron spoke up. There is something you should know. Jamie sent his friend a look, but was ignored. He moved his attention between the prince and that of Robert and Ned, dreading how they'd react to this truth. He stood up, prepared to intercede just in case tempers flared. Yes, my prince. Ned asked politely. It's me, he revealed. I'm the suitor for Lady Ashura's hand. You. Robert's follow-up came out more of a growl than a question. Jamie found himself taking a step forward. He was poised to involve himself if needed. I didn't ask for this, Daron was quick to add, nor do I want it. Ned's grey eyes stared at him, unflinching in their gaze. His expression gave nothing away, stoic and silent. You should do your duty then, my prince. Ned said finally, marry her and honor your family. Ned, listen to yourself, Robert chided, talking my cousin into marrying the woman you love. He clicked his tongue. It's madness. It isn't madness, Robert. Ned corrected him in an icy tone. Despite his stoicism, it was clear that this was hurting him. The prince must do his duty to his family. I will not, Daron put in bluntly. Duty and honor. He scoffed. If that is what they call taking the woman your friend loves and marrying her yourself, then I'll have no part of it. He shook his head. It may not be blood that binds us, but all of you before me know this. I consider you my brothers. I will not betray that bond or any one of you. Before anyone could speak up, Princess Elia surprised them with her sudden appearance. Jamie knew at once something was wrong. Elia, what is it? Lord Euronwood has challenged Oberyn to a duel. Rolla. What do you think? She looked up towards her good daughter to see the princess consort was holding her in cloth which had a poorly stitched single red dragon head amidst the black cloth. It is coming along nicely. Rolla had asked for her good daughter to come to her chambers for some early afternoon stitching. The queen had dismissed both her and Lila's ladies-in-waiting, wanting to get to know the new princess in private. She had been married to Rhaegar for a few months, but she still felt more stranger than kin. A divide which Rolla was determined to bridge, understanding the difficulties and pressure that came with being a princess consort and future queen. You are too polite, your grace. She looked down at her work. The head looks more like a worm. She let out a light laugh, and the body a blob. You are too hard on yourself, dear. Rolla consoled her. Princess Lila smiled in thanks. She was a beautiful young woman with the classic Valyrian beauty. She had pale gold hair and light blue eyes, with a slender, but womanly figure. When she spoke, it carried a lilt of a slight accent. Lord Stefan had chosen wisely in selecting her. The princess father was of the old blood, and his brother, the princess uncle Jellicoe, many believed would be elected a triarch in the near future. Her mother's family hailed from Lys and brought with it influence and wealth. Her marriage to Rhaegar made for the strongest match that the Iron Throne has ever had with the Free Cities. How are you settling in? Rhaegar has been kind and patient with me, she answered, Her pale cheeks tinged pink at the mention of her husband. He is a good man, and I'm thankful that he is my husband. Her eyes shone with sincerity. He played for me the other night when I was restless. He is so talented and has such a lovely voice. The seven have blessed me with good sons. Rollo was glad to hear that her eldest showed his wife kindness and doted on her in ways that his father never did. Lila nodded. I pray they bless me with children. She placed a hand upon her flat belly. I am ready to give him heirs and spares. Rollo was curious of her condition, but did not press. In time you and Roriga will be blessed with many sons and daughters. The princess perked up. I only complain because it has yet to bear fruit, but I do not complain of the act itself. She smiled before her cheeks flushed, suddenly realizing who it was she was speaking to. Forgive me, Your Grace. She bowed her head. I have spent too much time with a certain lady in waiting. Calm yourself, my dear. Rollo tried to soothe her embarrassment. She found herself more amused than insulted by the princess' words, bold as they may be. I am no blushing maiden or frowning scepter. Lila giggled. Your Grace is kind. She looked up when her cheeks regained their color. However, I will be more mindful moving forward. I must remember I am no longer in Volantis or Lies, but King's Landing. Rollo commended her good daughter for her sense and said as much. Lila looked thankful. I'm still trying to find myself here, she admitted softly. Each day I'm introduced to men and women, of different stations and families, trying to recall where they hail from, their house and sigil, their colors and their sayings. She shook her head. I'm afraid I may faint. You will learn them. I've been studying since the betrothal was announced, she revealed. I spent much of the journey to the capital itself with a tutor to help me so that I wouldn't be seen as some exotic fool. The people do not think you are one. Rollo chided the thought itself. That is a relief, she replied. However, that does not change the issue that I am still struggling with them. Then allow me to help you, Rollo offered. Lila's eyes widened. Your Grace, I am honored, but surely you have other more important tasks to attend to than helping me with something so trivial. Rollo held up her hand before Princess Lila could continue, trying to calm the worried girl with a gentle smile. I would love to. Lila returned it, looking relieved at her willingness to help her. You have my thanks, Your Grace. Rollo nodded, silently pleased that the princess was willing. She saw this as an opportunity to further get to know the young woman who will one day become queen. I must show her, Rollo was determined, how to be the queen. Eris never let me be. I'm sorry, Your Grace. A new voice entered their conversation. Both women turned towards the door to see Sir Alisa standing in the doorway. He was quick to bow his head at the interruption he caused. Prince Viserys is here, Your Grace. That is fine. Rollo stood up. Please send him in. Sir Alisa nodded, and stepped aside, and in an instant Prince Viserys appeared. He was smiling. Mama, he raised up his arms for her. Hello, my son. She felt her heart swell at the sight of her youngest. She picked him up, kissing his cheeks much to the child's delight as he giggled. He was getting bigger and heavier, and she felt her back stiffen and her muscles begin to protest the weight. She reluctantly put him back down. He pouted, but she remedied it by holding him close, which proved effective as he all but melted into her side when he noticed Princess Lila. Prince Viserys, she smiled warmly at the boy. How is my new brother? Her tone seemed to encourage the shy prince. Good, we talked about dragons. His words mumbled together. Rollo ran a hand through his hair. Which dragons did you learn about today, darling? She knew how much he loved them. Viserys' face scrunched up, struggling to pronounce it. Vermithor. Rollo helped him, the dragon of King Jaehaerys. Viserys bobbed his head up and down, eyes gleaming with excitement, the one's fury mispronouncing its name. He then raised his arms and began to wave them as if they were dragon wings. Lila oohed and awed at the display, which only emboldened him to continue in his imitation of a dragon. Rollo watched with a smile, pleased to see her youngest enjoying himself. He had been in a sour mood when Daeron left the capital. Viserys had wanted to travel with him, and Daeron had been inclined to the idea, but Aerys had adamantly refused suggestion outright. Viserys stays with me, Aerys had said sharply. I will not have two of my sons sully themselves with the Dornish. Thankfully, the comments were made behind closed doors, but Rollo was certain the words would leak to they'd take it as another slight from the Iron Throne. He wanted Viserys to stay, but made no effort to see him. She observed of her husband's hypocrisy. However, in this regard she did not mind, since she did not want to endanger her youngest with him. It was terrible enough that Aerys had turned Rhaegar and Daeron against one another for a sword. R'hllor's chest tightened at the memory. She had refused to witness the duel that pitted her sons against one another. She hated how her brother used them as pawns and how the court supported and cheered as her children fought each other. He poisons them, she thought bitterly, and her sons foolishly lapped it up. My children have become instruments to his madness, she thought despairingly. Her two eldest had never been close, and the duel between them ensured they never would be. Daeron had left the capital with Lord Robert Baratheons and his retinue of Stormland lords, shortly after the royal wedding. A tug on the sleeve of her gown pulled her from her musings to see it was Viserys, looking at her with bright eyes. May Aerys' grasp never reach you, she prayed softly. Her youngest was no longer pretending to be a dragon. I'm sorry, her hand rubbing Viserys' cheek while her eyes sought out the princess. I lost myself in thought, she apologized. Lila took her apology with the diplomatic decorum expected of a future queen. You are with family, your grace, she dipped her head. I am, she happily agreed, holding her son close. In that moment, wishing she had her other sons with her as well. Let us be together, she prayed, united. We are stronger than any force, she added. A dragon is a fierce creature, and we are dragons. Not even her brother could rip them asunder. What is one dragon in the face of so many? Mama, where is Day? She looked down at her son. You know where Daeron is yet. That did not stop him from asking for his favorite brother nearly every day. His face scrunched up. Why isn't he back? He will be, she tried to soothe the growing swell of emotions that she could see bubbling within her youngest. Doesn't he want to return? Viserys' voice hitched at the implication that Daeron would abandon him. Of course he does, R'hllor said instantly, scooping him up and placing him on her lap. He loves you more than anything in this world. Viserys' eyes gleamed. Really? The traces of a smile were beginning to push through. Absolutely, R'hllor insisted. Don't you forget that she told him, not ever. She tapped him on the nose and was rewarded with a giggle. Her heart sung at the sound. I won't, he said with all the severity he could muster. R'hllor rewarded him with a kiss to his brow, which he took willingly, before wrapping his arms around her neck. She returned the embrace, feeling him burying his head into the crook of her shoulder. The love she felt for him was so fierce, so rewarding, it was all she could do not to cry. My parents may have condemned me in my marriage, she thought, feeling tears in her eyes, but my children have saved me. She squeezed Viserys tight, and when she felt his hand slip to part the embrace, she kissed his hair before pulling away. Composing herself as she did, aware that they were not alone. Viserys wiggled in her lap, and she let him be, by helping him down. Her sides were sore, and she winced in pain, hoping to have hidden it from her good daughter. Aerys' touch is as gentle as a monster's claw. Luckily, it seemed Lila's attention was on Viserys, who was running around the room with the energy and imagination of a child, babbling happily to himself and lost in his own wonderful world. He loves his brother, Lila's eyes following Viserys as she spoke. Yes, R'hllor agreed, he loves Rhaegar as well, but the duties of a crown prince take him away from his duties as a brother. They do, Lila replied. Viserys is fortunate to have Daeron. We all are. R'hllor loved all her sons, and considered herself blessed to have 3 healthy boys in which to dote upon. When she was younger she wanted a daughter so as to be a better mother to her than hers was to her, but now the thought of more children disquieted the queen. More children meant more visits from Aerys. The fear was an icy chain that wrapped itself around her heart. She wasn't certain she was brave enough to endure her brother's attention. Or if I lost it? The possibility threatened to smother her. Can I bury any more of my children? It never stopped hurting, and numbness could do only so much in the face of all that grief. Of course Lila sensed she may have spoken out of turn. Daeron seems a good man, she amended, and will be as loving an uncle as he is an older brother. He will be. R'hllor had no doubts. I hear we may have another join our family, Lila said in a teasing tone. I wonder if that is why the prince remains in Dorne. Oh. Lila was not put off by R'hllor's lack of reaction. Why else would the prince linger in Dorne? He is trying to court his future betrothed. I was not aware Daeron was betrothed, R'hllor noted in a voice that was neither kind nor unkind. She was aware of the rumors and had warned her son of them when it came to his involvement. Now that Rhaegar was married, the court gossiped about Daeron's pending future and what maiden would be the next tied to the Targaryen family. He isn't, Lila said quickly, but I've been told Lady Ashura is a beautiful woman. Mayhaps the sight of her inspired him to chart a new course. Daeron has seen her many times, Rolla thought wryly, recalling the Dornish beauty's stay in the capital last year. She had come as a prospective bride for Rhaegar, but had left without a match. Though, Rolla noted that hadn't seemed to bother the young woman, and the Queen understood why that was in her limited interactions with the Dornish maiden and the second son of Lord Stark. He is with friends, Rolla remarked. House Martell is a strong ally of our family, and Daeron has continued to strengthen our two families with these friendships. House Martell is one of the great houses. She continued at the Queen's nod. I've been taught they are some of the oldest and most important families. You would be correct. In learning them I have noticed something, Lila said quietly. Houses Lannister, Stark, Baratheon, Martell. She listed them off. Rolla was impressed. She didn't detect any struggles from the princess in her reciting. Yes, those are most of them. She praised her memory. I am new to court, but I've heard that sons in each of those houses are close to your second son, Prince Daeron. My son is blessed with many friendships throughout the realm. Is it not odd? Lila asked, that they are friends with Prince Daeron instead of my husband, the Crown Prince. They are all loyal men. Rolla did not like the implication and made it clear in her tone. Loyal to the Iron Throne. Of course, Lila was quick to agree. Forgive me, I fear I may have become a victim of the deadly disease that sweeps through King's Landing. She lowered her voice, gossiping. She let out a laugh to offset the seriousness she alluded to when speaking of this sickness. Rolla measured the girl's words and decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. That these were innocent questions and not suspicious allegations. The silence that stretched between them appeared to bother the princess, so the Queen alleviated it by giving her good daughter an indulgent smile, and a laugh soon followed. I fear there is no cure. Lila giggled, putting a hand to her forehead as if overcome with dizziness. She even leaned back in her seat as if succumbing to it. Viserys had stopped playing his game. He approached his good sister. Are you all right? His tone wrought with worry. His little hand touching her arm. Layla. He had trouble pronouncing her name. The princess was quick to respond, shooting up from her position with cat-like quickness that caught Viserys off guard. My prince has saved me. She cooed towards him. I did. Viserys sounded equal parts pleased and surprised. Oh yes, Lila assured him, you are my hero. She had her hand over her heart. May I reward your heroic act? Viserys nodded excitedly at the idea of a reward. Lila bent down and placed a kiss upon his cheek, which turned his face scarlet. She didn't tease him for his reaction, but instead kissed his other cheek. I feel safer in the Red Keep knowing I have you as a protector. Viserys shyly thanked her and moved away, his head bowed, but Rolla could see his red cheeks. He is blessed to have you as a sister, Rolla remarked sincerely, touched by the interplay between her good daughter and youngest son. Lila looked pleased at her words. You honor me, your grace. I may not be blessed with a daughter from my own womb, Rolla thought, but in being with Lila and seeing her with her son, she realized she has a daughter, and one she can help and guide in the ways her mother never did. Rhaegar. Mother. He was sitting at a nearby table, but he rose to greet her. She had been made aware of his presence by Sir Arthur, who was standing outside the door to her chambers. She and Viserys having returned from a trip to the September. At seeing his oldest brother, Viserys was quick to greet him. The Crown Prince regarded his youngest brother with a stoic expression before he acknowledged him. Viserys, you look well. Viserys smiled up at his brother. I was a dragon. Rhaegar took his brother's babbling better than Rolla had expected, rewarding him with a small smile. We are the blood of the dragon, he told him. Never forget that, little brother. Viserys nodded, but at that point, Rhaegar had moved to greet her. It is good to see you. She kissed his cheek and let him lead her to the table where they sat down, but had I known you were coming, I would have instructed food and wine to be served. You are kind, mother, but that is not necessary, he declined. Viserys had slipped his hand out of her grip and had made to grab one of his toy dragons and moved to the corner to play one of his games, finding himself bored at the idea of hearing the adults talking. How is your wife? She is well. Rhaegar's voice carried neither warmth or coldness at the mention of her. She tells me she enjoyed her time with you. I did as well. Rolla smiled, pleased that she had not been alone in that thought. I lit a candle for her at the September today. and prayed that you will be blessed with a son. The time is not right for that, he said more to himself than to her. Even in talking to himself, he spoke with a confidence that surprised her. She was certain his words were in reference to one of the dusty old tomes that he sunk so much of his time into. Rollo had never been one to chide her children for favoring to read, but she could not deny her growing worry that these books were becoming more and more an obsession of his. My brother remains in Dawn. He is visiting friends. Rollo was caught off guard by her son's sudden change in topic, and noticed a certain look that flickered over his face at her answer. It may be in our family's best interest to pursue Lord Dane's request. The betrothal, Rollo called it for what it was. Yes, Roriger did not seem bothered by her correction. Daeron will not marry her. He frowned. Whether it was her answer or her bluntness, she did not know, but she suspected it could likely be both. He has an obligation to his family. You put forward the match. It came more as an accusation than an observation. They fight even now. Her heat ached, but now they are dragging in others. I did. Roriger didn't look abashed by it. She detested his anger, but was thankful in knowing that he would not lie to her face. It is a good match, he repeated. House Dane has proven their loyalty to our family and should be rewarded for their leal service. You do not do this for House Dane. She would not allow him to hide behind that weak shield. Roriger picked up on her meaning, but ignored it. He will take the news better if it comes from you. She favored him with a humorless smile. He will not take the news well regardless of who tells him. Destiny cannot be thwarted. The way ahead has been written and it is up to me to follow it, he said quietly. I will sit upon the Iron Throne and I will demand loyalty of both my blood and my people. Rollo stared at her son, stunned by the coldness in which he spoke. This was Aerys talking. The realization made her stomach clench. Her sweet firstborn son poisoned by the politics that corrupt this city, a selfish taint that seeps into your very bones and blood. Who needs enemies when you have family? She thought with melancholy. Who'd want that wretched throne when the mere thought of it turns blood against each other? A noise broke through her thoughts to see Viserys was suddenly sitting on Roriger's lap, who had moved to sit on the couch near the fire. Her youngest was playing with a silver dragon pendant that her eldest wore. Viserys was quietly mimicking the roars and growls that the three separate dragon heads would make. The sight of her two sons should have filled her heart with happiness, but she could not shield herself from the lingering despair that pricked at her heart like icy thorns. Daeron should marry for love. She let slip one of the few selfish hopes she had had for her younger sons. Her parents got to marry for love, and she'd never forgive them for forcing her to marry Aerys. If he wishes for any sort of allowance from the crown, then he'll honor this betrothal once it is set. Roriger dismissed. Daeron will not marry her. He'd sooner flee to the free cities. Rollo noticed the change in her eldest at this possibility. He does not care. Understanding his intent came as sharply and painfully as a dagger's thrust. Roriger would rather see Daeron an exile than have him in Westeros. Aerys, the name of her brother brought with it unexpected relief. He bore no love for the Dornish and insulted them whenever given the opportunity. Her brother was never one to think hastily, and she was certain that this betrothal would be stalled by Aerys' usual precociousness. That meant Daeron would have time to betroth to someone else, to marry someone else. There's. Viserys declared happily, oblivious to the tension between his oldest brother and mother, me, you, and Dae. He sounded proud at making the connection of the Targaryen sigil and that of him and his brothers. Roriger took the interruption smoothly, but made no remark on his brother's words. Which one is which, darling? Rollo humored her youngest, sending him a bright smile. He listed them off, pointing to each dragon's head when saying one of their names. No, Viserys, the dragon must have 3 heads, but they are of Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives, Roriger corrected, and those yet to come. Viserys pouted. Why can't it be us? Because that is not what was written. There was a glint in Roriger's eyes as he spoke of the 3 heads. He lifted his brother off of his lap with some difficulty as Viserys didn't want to let go. I have things to attend to, he said as a means to explain his departure. Mother, he bowed his head towards her and without another word he left. She leaned back into her seat, suddenly feeling sick. She wanted to cry at what was befalling her sons, but she did not think she had the strength to weep. Mama. Yes, my love. She looked down to see Viserys was at her side. I'm here. He held up her hands for her. She picked him up, feeling her heart swell at his thoughtfulness. I know. She kissed his hair as he snuggled closer to her. In having him in her arms, she felt some of her strength return to her. Our family must endure, she thought. I will not allow it to falter. Notes. More to come. If you have the time, don't forget to leave a review. It would mean a lot. Thanks for the support. Spectre for Hire. Chapter 15, Family. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. 279 AC. Circe. You came at a bad time. That's an understatement, brother. Circe kept her annoyance to herself, not wanting to argue in front of Tyrion, who was currently sitting on her lap. She wouldn't forget how happy he looked when he saw her for the first time upon her arrival. It made her heart swell at seeing his reaction and how he ran to greet her. She had been quick to pick him up and she hadn't let go of him since. The three Lannisters were in the chambers Circe had been given by Prince Doran. They were adequate, she thought, not as lavish or as ornate as the ones that Casterly Rock had for esteemed guests. Jaime's betrothed was currently with her brothers. She was grateful for her absence. The last thing she needed was watching her brother act a fool for his princess. However, even gone, she still had a way of making her presence felt, since Jaime seemed more concerned about Elia's predicament than he did for Circe's. Didn't father tell him how important this was? She wondered. Didn't mother explain his role to him? Circe hated to admit it because it felt like a weakness, but she needed Jaime to help her with Prince Daeron. So it's true, Circe finally spoke, realizing her brother was waiting for her. She shouldn't have been surprised. Jaime always needed guidance. If only father could see me now, she thought, I can lead too. Jaime looked to Tyrion, their oblivious little brother, before he answered. It is. Way to be inconspicuous, brother. She wanted to roll her eyes. But she didn't have the time to dwell on Jaime's shortcomings. She had to focus on the matter at hand. That meant the gossip she had been hearing since arriving first to Sunspear and then to the Water Gardens had been true. Lord Euronwood had challenged Prince Oberyn to a duel. It was to be to first cut, but now the Dornish lord was dead, and the prince was now known as the Red Viper. Do the Dornish do anything but cause trouble? She thought at the headache they presented to them. Where is the prince? She hoped she didn't have to clarify for Jaime. Circe thought it was better to speak with some vagueness with Tyrion being present. Despite his age, he was astute and observant. A look flickered across her brother's face that she couldn't quite decipher. He's kept mostly to his chambers the last few days. Because of the duel. Circe knew the prince was friends with Oberyn. Not exactly. Circe growled in annoyance at that infuriating and uninsightful answer. Tyrion mimicked her, swatting his hand as he did, as if pretending to be a lion. It was enough to quell some of the anger she felt rising within at her brother's incompetence. She kissed Tyrion on the top of his head. He responded with a happy squeal which felt warmer to her than the Dornish sun ever could. Jaime smiled down at the two. He does stroll the Water Gardens in the early evening before taking supper. Circe perked up. Finally, something useful from him. She showed him her appreciation with a smile. He responded to it with nothing but a nod. I remembered when my smile meant the world to him. Bitterness laced her wistfulness. Now all he cares for is his princess. Thank you, Jaime. She meant it. Despite her current annoyance directed at him, he was still part of their pride. Mother always said they had to look out for another. I'll let you know if he decides to spar again. Jaime took her gratitude with another helpful answer. It may be another opportune time to visit without unwanted attention. That would be appreciated. Surprised by her brother's insight. This was the Jaime she'd need if she were to be successful in getting that betrothal. A brother that was focused first and foremost on helping his family, on helping her. Something in Jaime's answer caught her interest. He hasn't been sparring. She didn't know the Targaryen prince well, but she remembered how dedicated he was to his training with the sword. No, he hasn't. Is that not strange? It is. A strange look passed over his face as he watched her. She tried not to be rankled by the clear insult that Jaime showed her. Do you think so low of me, brother? So what has changed? Jaime looked away, uncomfortable with either the question or the answer he'd have to give to sate her curiosity. It became clear she'd get no response to her question. Wonderful, she thought dryly, realizing she wouldn't be getting anything more helpful out of him. Frustrated, she turned to Tyrion, who had been watching his siblings talk. There was undisguised fascination in his mismatched eyes, but when she caught his attention, his face split into a wide smile. If only Tyrion could help me, she thought, he wouldn't keep secrets from me. He'd do anything to help me get my Targaryen prince. What a wasteland, she couldn't help but notice as she waited for the prince to make his expected appearance in the water gardens. Why the Targaryens want such a region was beyond her. In her travels she saw little of note, the only constant in this area seemed to be the heat and the sand. What a dreadful place to live, she observed, and the Dornish are proud of it. The more she had seen, the more she thought the Targaryens should have just let the Dornish keep their caves and deserts, let them live in sand and squalor. She stood on the edge of one of the fountains, glancing down upon her reflection. She had chosen a low-cut dress of red silk and gold trimmings. It had been selected by her mother to be worn for Cersea's first impression with the prince. "The sight of you in this," her mother had said as she inspected the dress back in Cersea's chambers. "And he's yours," she had added, a smirk and a raised eyebrow to emphasize her point. She was right. Cersei felt the eyes of many passing men linger upon her. None of them were brave enough to maintain their gaze when her eyes found theirs. Cheap, she thought, frightened to be caught in the sight of a predator. "I may be trying to seduce a dragon." Her fingers touching the golden lion head medallion that hung from her neck, "but I will not hide what I am, a lioness." Her golden curls shone in the sun, not a single strand was out of place. Her emerald eyes stared back at her, mirroring the confident gaze she wore. Satisfied at her appearance in the reflection, she turned away and looked once more around the water gardens for Prince Daeron. "I am a hunter." She walked by a group of children, laughing and splashing in the waters. "This dragon is my prey." She fought the urge to frown when he didn't come into view. Cersei couldn't risk it marring her face in a first impression if he happened to spot her before she saw him. "Let him see my beauty," she challenged, "so that he can be blinded to the steel lurking beneath." Then she spotted him. He was a ways away from her, his Kingsguard knight behind him. She went to a nearby alcove so that he could not see her, but she could see him. "I must study him before I am to ensnare him." "Prince Daeron is handsome," mother's words playing in her head as she watched him. In seeing him outside his brother's shadow, she saw him in a new light. He was a man whose prowess with a sword helped to carve a hard, rugged physique that made her own eyes linger especially on his arms and chest. She felt the heat rush to her face, admiring the sight before her. Then he turned suddenly, she darted back, heartbeat drumming against her ribs. She dispelled a breath, hoping and praying she hadn't been so foolish as to have been caught. She stayed against the wall, eyes closed, breath in her throat, and waited to see if he had seen her or not. After what felt like an eternity, but couldn't have been more than a few minutes, did she find her courage and peek to see. She dispelled the breath she had been holding when he wasn't looking her way. "He didn't see me," relief filled her at that. "I'm not some ditzy maiden," she chided herself at being distracted, "I am a lioness. If my family saw me in such state..." She dreaded some of their reactions. Father would scold, Jaime would snicker. She put them aside, since it was mother who she would turn to. Mother would smile and encourage her. With that comfort, she stepped out of the shade and into the light. She walked towards the oblivious prince. Cersei felt the thrill of the hunt, humming beneath her skin. Her heart fluttered within her chest. "This is my battle," she needed to steady herself, "and I must make it a victory." "Oh, my prince," she feigned surprise upon seeing him. Cersei followed her ruse with a swift curtsy. She was aware of with how her dress was cut that it would give the prince a plentiful view of her ample chest. "My lady," he replied politely. His look didn't betray if he had glanced upon her or not at the angle she hoped he had. "Your brother told me of your arrival to Dorne. How do you like it?" "It is hot," she admitted with a light laugh. "I'm afraid I'm not used to such heat," she admitted. "I fear I may faint." He frowned. "Shall I escort you back to your chambers?" Cersei restrained from smirking. Men are too predictable, reveling in her triumph. "I would not want to impose." She demurred. "Shall I insist?" She smiled. "I couldn't oppose a prince's order, could I?" He eyed her. his face masking his thoughts. He allowed the silence linger between them. Circe tried to keep her smile, but she felt it waning in the face of his stoicism. Before her panicking thoughts could smother her, a small smile appeared on his face. "That would be unwise, my lady." He then offered her his arm, which she took. Her fingers could feel the hard muscles beneath his shirt. She had the urge to tighten her hold on him just to better feel them, but she resisted. She looked up to see his lilac eyes were on her. "They're as mesmerizing as I remember." Being at the center of them and being so close brought an unexpected shiver of delight to go through her. "I heard you took my brother's wedding hard." The prince's blunt words hit her like a bucket of ice water. "Pardon," she spluttered, her composure cracking. He saw her struggle, and seemed to take pity on her, holding up his other hand to stop her from speaking. "You were not the only maiden disappointed in my brother's wedding." He said the words lightly, but frost lingered in their wake. Circe felt her tongue unexpectedly numb, and her throat tight as she tried to recover. She could sense his judgment, and did not need to see his disapproval to sense it lurking beneath his polite veneer. "You are right." She finally pushed out. "I will not balk at a challenge," she rallied. "To marry your brother would have been a chance to become queen of the 7 kingdoms." She looked off into the distance. "What girl doesn't dream of that?" she asked. "What father doesn't instill that in his daughters?" His eyes were staring at nothing in particular in front of them, making her figure that he was measuring her response. When his attention returned to her, his mask remained. "I will break that mask," she vowed. "What do you think of Dawn, my prince?" "It is a harsh place, my lady." He was honest in his opinion. "I also cannot help but dwell on those who came before me, my namesakes and their history with the land." "Who do you see yourself as, my prince?" She knew enough history to know the kings he referred to. The young dragon or Daeron the Good? "Neither, my lady." There was a curious lilt in his voice. "Those men were kings. I am and forever will be a prince." His expression thoughtful and more polite than the stony looks she had been getting since their encounter began. It was his eyes that made her duck her head. She was enamored with his eyes, lilac pools that she feared she could fall into. It wasn't until they were out of the sun and walking under the shade of the corridor that would lead them back to her chambers, did she look at him and speak again. "What of your brother?" Curiosity. Frustration. Pettiness due to his behavior. She couldn't say what prompted her to ask such a question. Circe knew the difficulties between the 2 oldest princes. She had witnessed their duel firsthand and heard of Jaime's observations over the years about their icy relationship. He nearly stopped at that. "My brother." Yes, she ignored the reaction it got out of him. She wouldn't cower to him, prince or not. His feelings for his brother were his problem, not hers. "Some say he will be the next Jaehaerys." She heard the quiet snort come from him at that, but she pressed on. "Others say Daeron the Good," she added, "but they do not know the crown prince like you do." She felt his arm tense beneath her grip. "So I was curious at how you'd see his future reign." "Were you?" His tone thick with sarcasm. I was undeterred by his response. Prince Daeron didn't answer, and as her room drew closer, she believed he wasn't going to. In a heartbeat, his demeanor had shifted, his lilac eyes glinted in the torchlight, and his body had instinctively stiffened, and it was all due to the mention of his brother. "This is my chambers," she announced, finding herself disappointed that it was over and that she didn't get an answer. However, regardless of her feelings, she knew what was expected of her. So she smiled up at him. "I thank you for the escort." He looked down at her, but his expression did not thaw. "You are welcome, my lady." Circe curtsied before turning her back to him so that she could get inside her chambers. She felt his presence remain but ignored him. Her door was halfway open before he spoke. "Aeris the First." When she turned to face him, he was already walking away, leaving her to ponder his choice. "You told her?" Just when she thought she knew the depths of her brother's foolishness, he'd surprise her by showing her that it went lower. "I did." He was unblinking to her anger. "Father told you this was for our family to deal with," she hissed. "Elia is family." Circe wanted to slap him for that answer. Her hand twitched, but before she could act on her rightful rage, the door opened to show Princess Elia walking in, smiling at them, Tyrion holding her hand. The Dornish princess initiated their embrace. Cersei wanted to squeeze her with all her might. Let her struggle, she thought viciously, let her feel my strength, my wrath. Elia turned next to greet her brother with a kiss that made Cersei clench her fists at her side. Her anger softened when she felt a small hand on one of her closed fists. Cersei looked down to see Tyrion's eyes looking at her with unbridled adoration. Cersei. She forgot all about her anger when she picked Tyrion up. She then began kissing his tummy. He giggled and squirmed, until he was breathless. Cersei carried him to the table where their supper had been laid out by the servants. She placed her youngest brother to her left when she sat down. Auntie Elia, Tyrion called her, sit next to me. He pointed to the empty spot on the other side of him. Auntie, Cersei wanted to scowl. She isn't your aunt, she wanted to correct him. She'll be our sister. But those words tasted just as bitter to her tongue, so she kept quiet. Elia smiled at him, and he basked in it. Then where should your brother sit? Tyrion already had an answer to that. He pointed directly across from him. There. What do you say, Jaime? Elia sounded amused. Jaime grinned, I know better than to argue with him. He tousled Tyrion's hair, and kissed Elia's cheek before moving to take his seat. It's only because you smell, Tyrion said with the innocence that only a child had. They all reacted differently to that unexpected remark. Elia giggled. Cersei felt her lips twitch. Jaime barked out a laugh, looking more amused than insulted. So you'd rather sit next to two beautiful maidens than your smelly brother? Tyrion bobbed his head up and down. I'm happy we're all able to be here together and eat. Elia decided to change the topic away from her smelly betrothed. It is wonderful for us to hear, Jaime replied to the princess, smiling towards her. Like a family, Tyrion said happily. Exactly, Jaime agreed, reaching across the table towards their youngest brother to tussle his hair. We will be sisters. Elia looked over Tyrion to Cersei. I've always wanted a sister. Cersei wanted to roll her eyes. She knew she couldn't, so instead she returned the princess' smile with one of her own. Me as well, princess. After that, she turned her attention to her supper. She didn't speak much, allowing Jaime and Elia to carry the conversation with Tyrion, who wanted to prove that he could join in without any problems. The food was spicy and hot, and with each bite, she could feel her stomach protesting. The taste burned her mouth and throat, and her eyes watered, resulting in her eating very little, and settling for the wine. She glanced to her side to see Elia was helping Tyrion cut up some of his food. Cersei watched the princess very carefully, ready to pounce at any off-handed comment or unkind look she might give to her youngest brother. In watching her, Cersei saw her give him only smiles and encouraging words, and in the exchange she could see how much Tyrion reacted to them. He loved it. There was nothing but adoration in his looks towards her, as he continued to call her Auntie Elia. Cersei was glad that the princess was treating her brother well. However, she couldn't deny a bit of hurt twist in her stomach at seeing her brother look at Elia in the same way he would look at her. I'm sorry to hear about your brother, Elia. He is leaving in the morning. There was a tremor in her voice. He'll be heading to Old Town to study at the Citadel for a while. Such a pity. Cersei shook her head, aware of the glare her brother was giving her. Yes, it is. Elia nodded. Oberyn is fortunate to have a brother like Doran to help him. She then turned to Jaime, whose glare slipped away as fast as snow in the Dornish sun. Oberyn will still come to our wedding, but then he'll be exiled for a time. Exile from Dorne, Cersei thought it a better reward than having to live in Dorne. My sympathies, princess, since family must be of the utmost importance. Giving a pointed look to her brother when she finished. I agree, Elia replied politely, and soon we will be family. I'll drink to that. Jaime raised his glass to family, smirking at Cersei when Elia was distracted with helping Tyrion raise his cup, who wanted to join them. Obligated, Cersei raised her glass to family, she chorused back, before their cups came together. Tyrion was a bit too enthusiastic about it and spilled some of his drink over himself and the table. I'll handle this. Elia had begun sopping it up on the table. There's no need to bother the servants. Jaime moved around the table to retrieve his brother, who was now sticky and stained. And I'll handle him. Holding Tyrion at a distance as to not ruin his own tunic. Tyrion, however, thought it a game and was trying desperately to grab at his older brother. Jamie was too amused to correct him. "I'll be back. Do not worry, we'll not be gossiping about you," Elia teased. Jamie nodded, before giving Cersei a pointed look when Elia's back was turned. Cersei smiled and waved him away, which only seemed to further sour his mood, but then he was out the door. "I want you to know Jamie told me about your family's plan." "Did he now?" Cersei kept her tone measured. Her brother had already informed her of it, but was curious with what the princess would say. "He did, and he feels guilty about it," Elia defended her betrothed, "but I think he made the right decision." She looked up to meet Cersei's gaze. "After, we'll be family soon." "Yes, we will." Cersei's smile was tight, and she hid it within a heartbeat of revealing it with her wine glass. "Sisters. Sisters," Elia repeated in a warmer tone than Cersei's. "I can help you with the prince." Cersei was surprised by her confidence. "I consider him a friend, which is more than you can say." Cersei frowned, perceiving it an insult at her expense. "He's no fool. He knows you wanted Rhaegar and not him," she went on. "Did you really think he'd forget that?" she asked incredulously. She stayed quiet because she knew Princess was right. Cersei was aware that she'd have to overcome her past follies to ensure her family got their betrothal with the Targaryens. She buried her pride and annoyance, knowing what she had to do to succeed. "What do you have in mind?" "Lysa." "Catelyn, Catelyn, Catelyn." Lysa sobbed into her pillow. It wasn't fair. She clutched her pillow. He was supposed to have loved her. He was to be hers. Another sob racked her body. He had picked her. Lysa Tully had run to her chambers after the humiliating and heartbreaking ordeal and hadn't left since. She wasn't sure how long she'd been in there. She raised her eyes from her pillow to see the sun was setting. A reddish glow splashed across the darkening sky. "I had wanted to make him feel better." She felt fresh tears pooling in her eyes. He had been upset about the talks swirling of her sister's betrothal to the heir of Winterfell, Brandon Stark. The announcement was not new, but the gossip of it was renewed when a new message from Brandon Stark came to Catelyn. Her sister had been delighted. Petter had been enraged. He hid it well, but Lysa could see it. It had taken all of her discipline not to move from her seat to comfort him. It wasn't until later was she able to finally see him. To finally free him of the pain and burden that no one else could see, but her. "He welcomed me with sweet kisses." She sighed, feeling heat cool in her tummy at the sensation of their tongues dancing together. Catelyn had only given him pecks and dances, but Lysa, she would have given Petter whatever he asked for. His hands were gentle on her, and she thrilled at his touch, his eagerness. He wanted her. She could feel it in her bones. His passion for her burned in her blood. He had moaned. It was her lips that elicited his desires. In between their kissing and touching, was when he betrayed her. It was when he showed her his true desires. "Catelyn," he had murmured. "Cat," he had said it again, but lower. Lysa had pulled away as if slapped. "What?" His eyes glassy from lust. In his gaze she saw the truth. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Catelyn. That was who he spun in his mind, that was who his heart coveted. It had never been her. It was always about Catelyn. She felt her tummy tighten as it dawned on her. Lysa had rushed out of his chambers at that, crying, but he didn't go after her. Petter never tried to comfort her. He never came to her to tell her it was a mistake, a slip of the tongue. He never attempted to soothe her like he used to. His absence was all the more telling. "Lysa." A knock followed the muffled voice. She spun around to her door, surprised at the unexpected visitor. "Uncle Brynden." "Yes, child," he paused. "May I come in?" One moment Lysa felt the panic in her chest. Looking at her reflection to see her face was red and puffy from crying. She scrubbed away the tears that lingered on her cheeks. She then tried to smooth out the wrinkles of her dress. "Come in, uncle." Lysa, his eyes took in her appearance. "What happened to you, child?" There was an edge to his voice that was sharper than the steel he carried. "Nothing, uncle," she lied quickly, turning away when his scrutiny seemed too much. She heard his footfalls across the floor, metal boots clanging against stone and carpet. Then she felt the bed shift, and she looked to see he had taken a seat at the edge of her bed. Even when sitting, her uncle was a tall man. He was dressed in his ringmail, his tully-colored cloak attached by a clasp of an obsidian pin in the shape of a trout the blackfish. His auburn hair was thick and curly, with just little bits of grey beginning to show. His eyes were deep blue and kind, looking at her with undisguised worry. He raised one of his bushy eyebrows in question at her lie. "Lysa, you missed your sessions with both your Septa and the Maester." "I'm sick." It wasn't a lie. She was sick. It was just a different ache than the ones she was used to. It was brought on by Petter, and she wasn't sure if there was a cure for it. His eyes didn't give away whether he believed her or not. "Your father left to sort out another squabble between the Brackens and Blackwoods." In knowing her father was gone, Lysa realized that the duties of Riverrun had fallen on her uncle since Edmure was too young to take on the responsibilities. "It's Petter." Her uncle's voice shook her from her thoughts to see he was watching her closely. The denial was in her throat, but seeing his eyes pinning her, she knew it was futile. She ducked her head, and felt fresh tears ready to spill at the reminder of Petter's treatment of her. Bryndon's hand was calloused but gentle on her cheek when he raised her head so that she could look at him. What did he do? The shame and pain rushed back to her. Her lip trembled, she looked into her uncle's dark blue eyes. Even now they remained friendly towards her. He rejected me. Uncle Bryndon made a noise in the back of his throat. Frowning as he spoke, "I knew you three are close, Lysa. I saw your childish games in the Godswood, and the glances and chaste kisses he revealed when Lysa blinked owlishly at him, but those are the games and feelings of a child." He observed kindly, "You are a Tully and a woman flowered." The reminder of her first flowering made her tummy clench. It had been months ago, but she couldn't forget how afraid she was when she woke up to the blood. She had felt sick for days afterwards. Despite the Septa's words and advice, Lysa suffered. "He needed me," she realized slowly, "but I don't need Petter." "I know, uncle." Her voice sounded more like a hiccup. "Petter may be your father's ward, and your friend, but he is not a worthy suitor for you." Her uncle never shied away from being blunt. He wrapped her in a one-arm embrace that made Lysa cling to him, grateful for his support. "You are a beautiful young woman, and your father has no end of suitors for your hand." "Really?" She looked up to see her uncle looked a bit uncomfortable at the topic. That discomfort left his expression when his eyes met hers. "Yes," he confirmed, kissing the top of her head. "One of them is in this very castle." Lysa perked at that secret. "Truly?" He rewarded her surprise with another smile. "Would I lie to you?" He feigned hurt. Lysa giggled. "Never, uncle." This time she hugged him, feeling renewed at his kind words and helpful advice. "Good." He looked pleased that her mood was shifting. "Do not forget who you are, Lysa. Draw strength from that, and know you are not alone. It is family to who the Tullys turn to." "Family, duty, honor," she suddenly recited. "That's my girl. Sir Bryndon." A new voice entered their conversation. Lysa looked to see her uncle's newly arrived squire standing in the doorway, Denizer in. He was tall, with curly sandy blonde hair, and eyes as bright as the morning blue sky. He walked with grace, but she saw the hard muscles beneath his clothing. When he smiled at her, she blushed and looked away. Was he the suitor? Lysa reacted with giddiness. "He's so handsome." She suddenly felt self-conscious of her appearance, knowing she probably looked terrible. Here she was with a messy dress, tangled hair, red face. A part of her wanted to hide behind her uncle until he left. Her uncle didn't miss the way she looked at his squire. "Denies, one of the duties of a knight is to safeguard the innocent," he told him. "That includes young, pretty maidens like my niece." He winked at her. "She wants to go to the castle September to pray. You will escort her, and then find me in the armory." "Of course." Sir Bryndon Denies took the instructions without complaint. "Remember my words, Lysa," Uncle Bryndon told her with a mirthful twinkle in his deep blue eyes. "I will." Denies stepped forward when her uncle had left the room. He smiled at her. "My lady, I would be honored." Lysa felt her heart flutter at that smile. "The honor is mine." 280 AC. Barristan. "Did my father say why he wanted to see me?" "He did not, my prince." Prince Daeron tried to hide his discomfort at that truth, but the worry remained beneath his eyes. Barristan did not know what to say, so they walked in silence. All he knew was that a messenger had come to the training yard where the prince and his friends had been sparring. He wouldn't forget the silence that fell over the friends who just minutes ago were loud and laughing. Their joy snuffed out in an instant. Robert and Jaime had suggested they could attend as well, but the messenger repeated the king's words. Prince Daeron was to come at once and alone. What does it say about a father that his son walks to him with trepidation? He frowned at those insidious thoughts. Targaryen guards stood at the door to the great hall. They bowed at their approach with one opening the doors for them. The prince nodded and walked in. He's to come alone, the guard insisted when Barristan moved to follow Prince Daeron. Prince Daeron is my responsibility, Barristan reminded him, leveling a glare in the guard's direction. He wilted, bowing his head, and did nothing when Barristan followed the prince into the great hall. The cavernous hall was empty. Their footfalls echoing as they moved. The braziers were lit, casting the dragon skulls above them in flickering sights of awe and horror. There standing at the foot of the throne were Sirs Alisa Thorne and Jonnet Hordiari. They did not move or react to their encroaching presence. My son comes at last. Aerys Targaryen II of his name sat atop the Iron Throne. Disheveled and frightening, he looked down at them beneath unkempt hair and suspicious eyes. Your Grace. Daeron went to a knee, bowing his head. Forgive me if I kept you waiting. Barristan stopped a few paces behind Prince Daeron. It was difficult for him to take his eyes off the king. He looked worse now than at Duskendale, where he had freed him from a half-year of captivity. Rise, my son. Daeron obeyed, but stayed quiet. He seemed wise enough to know to let his father speak first. Do you take me for a fool? His voice cracked like a whip. I take you for a king, Your Grace. Daeron kept his head down. Do you know it's treason to plot against your king? Aerys' voice was sharper than any one of the swords upon the Iron Throne. Father, the prince faltered. King Aerys corrected harshly, looking down at him with contempt. King Daeron repeated, I serve the crown and House Targaryen. Aerys laughed. A wheezing, cruel sound, spittle could be seen dangling from his chin. Did you hear that, Lord Varys? The eunuch appeared as if conjured out of thin air by the side of the Iron Throne. I did, Your Grace, his voice softer than the silks he wore. His bald head gleamed in the torchlight. His hands kept beneath the folds of his brightly colored robes. My birds say differently, my prince. Lies. Barristan could only see the back of the prince's head, but he was certain the young man was glaring at the Master of Whisperers. My birds sing all sorts of seditious things, Varys tittered. They sing of lions and stags, and wolves trying to take down a dragon. Lies. Daeron snapped again. I should cut you down where you stand, Varys. He spat out the eunuch's name. Lord Varys is a servant to the crown. Aerys clicked his tongue. While your loyalties are not so certain, they are to you, father. The spittle remained on the king's chin, dripping down. We shall let him prove himself, he decided. You'd follow my orders. Yes. So if I asked you to die in the name of your king, you'd follow them. Barristan flinched. He looked to see Sir Alisa frown, shifting in his stance, but not Jonnet Hor. He remained still and stoic, as if he was carved from marble. Daeron stammered, uncertain what to say at such a ridiculous order. Silence. Aerys waved a hand. I would not like to be lied to. He squirmed on the throne, careful to keep his arms from resting on the blades. I could kill you where you stand. Do you understand that, boy? As if to prove his point, Sir Jonnet Hor. Yes, Your Grace. Bind my son, Aerys ordered. He is a threat to your king. Jonnet Hor moved forward with only slight hesitation. Barristan found himself mirroring the knight's movement. Stand down, Barristan. Aerys saw him. You are a sworn member of the King's Guard, not the Princess Guard. Barristan obeyed. His hand clenched into a fist at his side. His legs felt bolted to the ground, weighed down by his vows. All he could do was watch helplessly as Sir Jonnet Hor reached Prince Daeron, who offered no resistance. He seemed more frightened and surprised, as if unable to truly comprehend what was happening to him. The knight bound Daeron with no protest. Aerys looked down, smiling in satisfaction. Barristan looked around for anyone. Surely this could not be happening. Where was Lord Tywine? Where was the Queen? Where was Lord Commander Hightower? Surely one of them would stop this madness. Wherever he looked, all he saw was shadows or darkness. It was him. There was only him. Your Grace, a part of Varys' face remained in the shadows. He is a traitor. He is too dangerous to be kept a prisoner. Barristan's heart stilled at the underlying meaning to the eunuch's words. Sir Jonnet Horace called down to the knight. Yes, Your Grace. Kill him, the King of the Seven Kingdoms ordered. Sir Jonnet Hoare did not move at first, as if trying to understand the orders he'd been given. Barristan felt hope in his chest. He was relieved that his brother-in-arms saw this for what it was, madness. Then Jonnet Hoare drew the dagger from its sheath before he could move or shout. The knight plunged the blade into Daeron's chest. The prince gasped, crying out. Jonnet Hoare released his hold on him. Daeron collapsed to the ground with a thud and to the sound of his father's laughter. Barristan rushed forward. What have you done? He didn't spare Jonnet Hoare a look as he knelt beside Prince Daeron. My prince. He picked him up. The wound was red and ugly, blood seeping onto the prince's black tunic. Daeron's eyes were unfocused, a sheen beneath his lilac gaze. He opened his mouth, blood gurgled out but no sound. My prince. Barristan was unsure what to do. Get a maester. He shouted, looking to see Jonnet Hoare remained where he stood, over them. He watched helplessly the last flicker of light behind the prince's eyes before his chest stilled. The prince and his squire died in Barristan's arms. He felt arms pulling at him, but Barristan resisted, fighting them as he kept his grip on his dead prince. No, release me. He shouted, release me. Sir Barristan. Barristan woke to a start. A tight grip wrapped around his arm, but he tried to break free. Barristan. What? He shook his head, weariness clung to his mind. What happened? Sir Gawain Gaunt was holding Barristan's arm, which brandished the knife that Barristan kept concealed in his bed. You were asleep. He didn't loosen his grip on his arm. I came to wake you. Your shift is to start soon. A dream. Barristan muttered. It couldn't have been. It was too real. I was there. I watched him die. And the prince. Prince Rhaegar is on Dragonstone. Gawain was openly frowning. Prince Viserys is in his chambers. Barristan felt his heart plummet at that. It was as he feared. Dream or not, the truth remained, Prince Daeron was dead. He did nothing to stop it. It was in this self-inflicting haze that he barely heard what Sir Gawain said next. And I just left my post outside Prince Daeron's chambers. He blinked. Prince Daeron. He sat up, is alive. Of course Gawain's mustache twitched. Do you suspect something will befall him? He was so delirious with joy that it took him a few seconds before realizing that he had accidentally implied that the prince's life was in danger. No, Sir Gawain, Prince Daeron is fine. He assured him, relief coloring his tone. He sagged back into his bed. It was a dream. He said more to himself than to his fellow Kingsguard, nay, a nightmare. Gawain studied him in silence for a few heartbeats before nodding. You are expected shortly. He looked pointedly at the dagger that Barristan was still holding before the knight left his chambers. It wasn't real. He sheathed his dagger. It wasn't real, he repeated, trying to calm the nerves that gnawed at him. As he got himself ready for his post, he couldn't help but think, dream or not, it felt real. The dream would slip away in time, but not the cold truth gleaming from it. That of Varys' growing unpredictability, coldness, paranoia. And that frightened him more than the nightmare itself. The laughter of the prince and his friends was a welcomed reprieve for the weary Sir Barristan. He stood from his spot in the small hall in the Tower of the Hand. Prince Daeron was at a table with Lords Robert Baratheon and Jaime Lannister. The three friends were breaking their fast together. He deserves this, Barristan thought with a smile. He could still remember a time when Daeron was younger. The boy was shy and lonely. He would only be seen with whatever guards or knights were tasked with watching him. His father, who had once been overjoyed at having a second son and spare to the crown, Prince Rhaegar, began to grow resentful of him. He would openly ponder to court why he was given a son when he needed a daughter, a sister and a wife for Roriger. While the rest of court was relieved at the prince's birth. They feared had he been born a girl, that their chance at pushing their sisters and daughters for a possible betrothal with the crown prince would be thwarted. When that did not happen, and he was born a boy and the spare, they largely ignored him while the court moved to jostle themselves to win the king's fickle favor. Now look at him, he was watching him with his friends. He's turning into a good man, and a formidable warrior. Barristan felt a sense of pride at the young prince, who was also his squire. The wound was red and ugly, blood seeping onto the prince's black tunic. Barristan pushed that harrowing image away as quickly as it had come. No, it was not real, he told himself. He stepped forward as if wanting to put it behind him. When he moved a bit closer it allowed him to better hear their conversation. "You're in good spirits," Robert Baratheon's voice easily carried throughout the hall. "If I had not taken my vows, he'd be my lord." Barristan thought wryly, reflecting on the life he could have had as the Lord of Harvest Hall. "I left behind my home and a betrothal for this," he reflected without regret. Aers flickered in front of him, disheveled and sneering, but Barristan refused to let it linger. He took a calming breath and the king was gone. "I will not forget my oaths because of a bad dream." Jaime Lannister was grinning from where he sat across from the Lord of Storm's End. "I am getting married in a few weeks." A fine swordsman, Barristan had watched the heir to Casterly Rock spar with Prince Daeron more times than he could count. Those two were practically brothers. He believed it was the young lion who helped turn the prince into the man he was becoming. Before the prince was shy and quiet. He had kept mostly to himself and only lingered in a few places throughout the Red Keep, mostly his quarters and the training yard. It was painful to see a young boy so despondent. Barristan had always tried to help the prince when he could, which included making him his squire. He had wanted Roriger's attention and affection, Barristan noted, like any younger brother who looks up to the elder, but the crown prince gave him little. The prince preferred books to brothers. He frowned at the cold, blunt truth of the matter. He will still be a good and wise king. Barristan was certain of the greatness that awaited Roriger when he would ascend to the Iron Throne. "That is who I will someday serve, and gladly." Still. Prince Daeron's words brought Barristan's attention back, the playful banter amidst the friends. "I would have thought the princess would have come to her senses." Robert guffawed into his tankard. "Very amusing," Jaime remarked wryly, poking at his eggs, "with friends like you two who needs enemies." The prince smiled. He was holding his glass in one hand. "It appears I do not need a sword to wound my friend's pride, cousin." "To wound me, you'd have to be able to touch me." Jaime rubbed his chin, feigning to be in deep thought, "and if I recall from our last bout, you did not." He grinned when he added, "I also did it without a special Valyrian sword." Daeron took his friend's words with a chuckle. "That is because Princess Elia gave me specific instructions to not scar you before the wedding." He leaned forward. She did not want her beloved bruised or cut. He shrugged. "Your betrothed is not a lady to anger, so I heeded her warning." He took a sip, or should I say, her threat. Robert took a bite out of a piece of bacon, not waiting until he was done chewing to speak. "A good bruise would have showed her you can fight and survive. Like how you're showing me what you're eating." Jaime was brushing away the specks of food and crumbs that Robert left in his wake. The Lord of Storm's End laughed, shaking his half-piece of bacon at Jaime. "I wasn't aware lions had such sensitive stomachs." "Indeed," Jaime remarked dryly, turning his attention away from Robert and onto Prince Daeron. "Do you think Ned reached Winterfell?" Barristan was there when the prince and his friends saw off Eddard Stark at the docks in King's Landing. It had been more than a fortnight past when he set off by ship to return to his family's ancestral seat at Winterfell. The second son of Lord Stark had been tasked to escort some of his family to the wedding between houses Martell and Lannister at Casterly Rock. The prince thought it over before he nodded. He should be there." He then took a sip from his glass. "I considered joining him." "I was not aware you were invited," Jaime observed. Daeron smiled at that, "one of the privileges of being a prince. I am a welcome sight wherever I travel." He leaned back into his seat. "They fall over themselves for my family. And it is my humble duty as their prince to accept their warm hospitality. You have my sympathies for such a struggle, my prince." Barristan could only shake his head while the prince and his friends laughed with one another. He looked out at the young men sitting before him who were sharing mirth and fellowship. Thank the seven the prince found them. He is a better man because of it. Why would you want to go north? Jaime asked once the laughter subsided. It's all cold and frozen, and he waved his hand. Nothing. You're not the least bit curious about the wall. I've seen walls before. Jaime did not look impressed. And why is a frozen one more impressive than one made of stone? He shrugged. You know, besides protecting us from the Grumpkins and Snooks. I'm not sure they are, since I'm sensing some Snook at this table. Daeron smirked. Jaime chuckled. You have me there. And what stone walls do you know that are 700 feet tall? The prince raised his eyebrows at the impressiveness of the structure. Besides, Winterfell is said to be a great castle to behold. It is. Robert rejoined the conversation. A good land and a good people, if you ask me. He sounded wistful in his recollections from his visit there. Good people. Jaime shared a look with Prince Daeron. Do not tell me you fathered another bastard when you were visiting, Robert. No, Robert actually sounded flustered. I did not. He crossed his thick arms over his chest, upset at the accusation. How is your girl? Daeron seemed to sense his friend's souring mood and decided to move on. It worked in an instant. Robert's eyes flashed with pride with a growing smile. Maya is growing, he laughed. She's willful and loud. Barristan could detect the sincerity in the Lord of Storm's End voice and expression when referring to his young bastard daughter. He looked to be a proud father, bastard or trueborn. It did not seem to matter to the young Storm Lord. Will she stay in the Vale? At the question, Robert's smile only grew. There was a gleam in his blue eyes. Our time in Dorne inspired me, he revealed. I've written to Prince Doran, and when the time is right, she and her mother will travel to Dorne, where they will be the prince's guests and reside at the Water Gardens. Truly. Jaime could not hide his surprise at the choice. Robert took satisfaction at his friend's reaction. Are you surprised that your future good brother did not tell you, or that I can come up with something sensible? Jaime took the good-natured jape with a smile. Clearly the latter, my friend. Robert laughed. Your honesty is as refreshing as ever, Lannister. Well done, Robert. Daeron praised him. She could have a good life in Dorne. Barristan understood their shock as well as their happiness with their friend's decision. It was a surprising move by the Storm Lord. A show of maturity and wisdom that he seemed to hide behind bawdy japes and drinking songs. Robert looked pleased. Thank you, cousin. He bowed his head. You were right to challenge me. For a flickering heartbeat he looked like a scolded child. I am not certain she will stay in Dorne all of her life, despite the prince's assurances she and her mother were more than welcome to stay. Robert hesitated, but I hope it to be a good life for her while she's there. She will be thankful, the prince assured him. And that will be because of you, cousin. Thank you. He looked touched at the prince's thoughtful words. The prince is right, Robert. Jaime echoed the agreement. He then raised his glass, to Maya. Daeron looked approvingly of the gesture. He raised his glass and the friends chorused it before clanging their glasses against one another and drinking to the health and happiness of Robert's young daughter. Arthur. When he had been told by the maester that he had received a raven, Arthur was not certain who it was from. His sister, who used to be a constant writing companion, had drifted apart these past few months. Her messages to him now were terse and brief, with an inky veneer of politeness. It hurt to receive them, to know that his sister's bitterness still lingered. I am a knight, not a lord, Ashura. He had written to her when the rumors began to swirl between a betrothal between herself and Prince Daeron. I've done nothing, said nothing. He wanted her to understand that this was not his doing. Arthur would not forget how she had responded to him. That is right, brother. You did nothing. The disappointment and sadness in her letter had cut Arthur deeper than any sword. The sword of the morning, and I'm disarmed by my sister's quill. A year had passed and there was still no arranged match between his sister and Prince Daeron, but the divide remained between the siblings. He sighed. Dragonstone's grim and dreary design did nothing to chase away Arthur's dark thoughts. The island fortress had received some cosmetic changes from the princess. Her friends and family had taken up rooms and posts within the castle. They turned it into a buzzing hub of activity, that more resembled a bee's hive. More ships than ever visited the island from all over. Arthur suspected it was more than just cargo that was bought and traded, but information. Roriger was relying on the influence of his good family to bring and spread what they heard across the narrow sea from the free cities and to the other parts of Essos. Arthur has spent years living and visiting this island and had never seen it so active and crowded. The princess entertained guests from all over Westeros and Essos. Now that she was pregnant, she was seen more often, not shying away but instead parading the growing swell of her belly. She wanted all to see that she and the crown prince's marriage was fruitful. She glowed. She was a fine jewel that dazzled and awed all who came to see and speak with her. The real reward to life at court on Dragonstone would be when the crown prince would make an appearance. When he did, he would have his harp and would play to the adulation of the court. He captivated them with his talent, and converted them to his cause, with little more than a look and a song. This truly was the prince's court. He was impressed at how Princess Lila handled the attention and the gossiping. She was the crown prince's wife, but she was from Volantis. Despite having the Valyrian blood, she and her family were often seen or sneered as outsiders. It had been one of Arthur's primary concerns when his friend and wife took up at Dragonstone. He wondered and suspected that not all would be pleased or welcome a foreign princess to their shores. Arthur had made the appropriate observations and preparations in rooting out those who could possibly mean to harm the princess and her family. Sir Arthur. He looked up to see one of the Maestus acolytes hail him. "'Twas a raven arrived from the capital, sir." The acolyte was young and pock-marked. His eyes were unable to hide their awe when they spotted the sheathed dawn. "Thank you." Arthur took the message, recognizing the Kingsguard seal. This had come from Lord Commander Hightower. He opened it with his thumb and read its contents, and then reread them to make sure he hadn't misread any of it. "Shall I send a reply?" "Not yet." Arthur closed the letter. "I shall need some time." The acolyte bowed his head. "Of course, sir." Arthur thanked him and left, reflecting on the orders from Lord Commander Hightower. He knew before he could send any message that Roriger must be informed. He found his friend and crown prince at the chamber of the painted table. The round room at the top of the massive stone drum tower. Prince Roriger was dressed in black silk with dashes and sashes of red here and there. A Targaryen brooch pinned to his chest. His silvery hair fell past his shoulders. He leaned on the famous table commissioned by his ancestor and the first Targaryen king to rule Westeros, Aegon the Conqueror. Arthur quietly approached as he heard his prince speaking to the assembled men. "There are those lords who we can be depended on, if they are called on." He looked down at the massively carved table that depicted Westeros. He was sitting at the raised seat that was positioned near Dragonstone, allowing him to view the entirety of the table and the room itself. "Lords Derry and Went in the Riverlands are considered friends to our cause. While the phrase can be bought." He pointed to each of their castles on the table when the families were said. "Elberatarin has told me that many houses in the Vale will support our case." That was when he looked up to see Arthur. He tilted his head in acknowledgement, but continued to speak. "I am reasonable," he told them. "I will try to entice Lord Hoster with a new match." He turned his attention to where Jon Connington was sitting. "You will make a good offer to the Tullys for his youngest daughter?" Jon Connington gave a tight nod. "Of course, my prince." Satisfied, Roriger turned away, unable to see how much Lord Connington hoped that betrothal would fail. The crown prince stood from his seat. "It is vision that is what separates my family from all the others." He looked out at them. "It was the vision of Daenerys the Dreamer that spared my family the same cruel fate that took down the greatest empire the world has ever seen." He put his hand forward, gesturing to where Dragonstone was on the map. "It was the vision of Aegon the Conqueror that unified the warring kingdoms under the banner of the three-headed dragon. That vision brought Westeros peace and prosperity it had never seen when they were separate and squabbling. It was the vision of the Conciliator, King Jaehaerys the First, that would solidify my family's rule and place on the Iron Throne to help us govern Westeros for the centuries that would follow." He held up a finger. "That is what I'm asking all of you and our allies to trust. That vision, my vision." Arthur watched from the corner, seeing how his friend's words had a way of enthralling those he came into contact with. He could see it in their expressions. In their eyes as they followed the crown prince's word and movements. All of them ensnared by his charisma and confidence, devout to his cause, believers to his vision. We are with you, my prince. Lord Connington was the first to stand and speak about loyalty. I know many in the Stormlands who are loyal to the right dragon regardless of the stag's preference. You are a good friend, Jon Roriger thanked him. The Lord of Griffin's Roost looked pleased, dipping his head. That will be all. The Crown Prince dismissed them as he moved to retake his seat. Arthur watched them leave, and waited for the doors to close before he approached his friend. And dragons. That got his friend to look up. Pardon? You said it was visions that separated your family from the rest, but you forgot the dragons. Yes, dragons too, Roriger agreed. Arthur was pleased at the small smile his jape received. Knowing how difficult it was to elicit such a response from his friend who was prone to melancholy. I've received a raven from Lord Commander Hightower. The Crown Prince did not look surprised at the news. Hightower's raven, but my father's words. Orders. Arthur wanted to correct his friend, but he did not. I serve the king. He clenched his right hand. The man before me will be king, my friend. He repeated the words he told himself whenever his gut wavered. I've already made my choice. Roriger will be king, and that is who I serve. I imagine so. Arthur made sure to convey none the inner struggle, no matter how brief it had been. I've been summoned back to the capital by your father. The king. I am certain the spider has been whispering in his ear. Roriger looked unbothered. He will send another knight of the King's Guard to Dragonstone. He met Arthur's eyes. I suspect that my father is changing the rotation of his knights to uproot all loyalty save for those due to him. He is not wrong to be suspicious. Arthur stamped down those words as soon as they sprouted. He will likely take Sir Barristan and Sir Gawain away from my brother. Your brother still serves as Barristan's squire. My brother will have little time for his duties in the coming weeks. The wedding, Arthur understood. Many who came to the island spoke of the pending wedding between Jaime Lannister and Princess Elia Martell. The union of two great houses, hosted by the wealthiest family in the Seven Kingdoms. The gossiping of how lavish and splendid it was going to be was the talk from the docks all the way to the keep itself. I believe Sir Gawain will be coming to Dragonstone. Roriger's soft-spoken voice did not betray his thoughts on the matter or manner of the night. And you will be assigned to either my father or my brother. If I am correct, then I ask for your help, my friend. Arthur felt something inside him twitch. My help? Yes, Roriger answered. I need you to keep me informed on what it is my father or brother are doing while you are away with them. You'd have me spy? Arthur's mouth instinctively twisted. How can I act like something I am not? To deal in shadows and secrets. I am a soldier, not a spy. Give me a sword and I will give you my service, but a scroll. He did not know how to do that. He tried to form the words to reject his friend's offer. To tell him it was folly or that it should not be done, but when he met the prince's eyes, he could not. He bowed his head. I will try. Thank you. Roriger turned away from him, and out of his seat. My ancestor died at this table, his fingers skimming the veneered surface of it. The passing of Aegon the Conqueror eventually forged a bloody conflict that nearly brought down the Targaryen reign before it could be solidified. Maegor fought against his own nephew, the rightful heir to the throne. He took the crown for himself. Blood betrayed blood, he said softly. Our family's greatest threat, Arthur, has always been ourselves. His eyes shone by the light of the brazier. Only a dragon can topple a dragon. Notes. The dream I went back and forth on, including. In the end, I decided to keep it because I thought it served as a nice little seed to plant in Barristan's heart and mind that could be explored as this story progresses. Also to reflect the toll serving under Aerys was likely to have on them. I'm sorry if you didn't like it or its inclusion. I know Arthur is low on the poll, but I always saw him at least having this chapter /viewpoint with Roriger. He was a challenge to write since we know so little about him, but I hope I made him believable in this complex world that Martin has constructed. Your support means so much to me. Getting your reviews did wonders to keep me inspired even in the face of struggles and trials. So please, if you can spare a few minutes to leave one, I would greatly appreciate it. It really does make a difference. Thanks for reading. Spectre for Hire. Chapter 17, Serve. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Roller. I've been summoned. Cold fingers rested on her heart when the messenger informed her that her brother and her king requested her presence in the council chambers. The armored footfalls of Sir Alisa, her diligent knight, who walked behind her. She had little faith in the men who guarded her because she knew their loyalty was to her brother, and it extended from there on his leave. The fear was pulsating in her chest as she wondered and worried why her husband would have need of her at this time of day and location. She felt her fingers tremble as they neared. She clasped her hands together, not willing to show any fear in the presence of her brother. "I am a dragon." The words caused her to stand straight as the chamber doors came into view. A handful of Targaryen guards stood outside as well as Sir Barristan Selmy, who led the ripples of bowed heads. "Your Grace." "Sir Barristan." She was surprised to see him. She had been informed he was to be guarding her son, Daeron. "The prince is inside, Your Grace," he answered her unasked question with a gentle smile. The presence of her son was a welcome balm to her worries. "The king is waiting." Feelings of dread stirred within her, but she could not show weakness. She smiled towards the knight. "I shall not keep him waiting." She steadied herself before she stepped inside the chambers, with her head held high. "Whatever Aerys does to me, I am still a dragon." Her eyes took in the room. Mirish carpet was spread along the floor. Tapestries hung on the walls from all parts of Essos including Lys and Norphos. The sigil of her house hung alone and proud. The red three-headed dragon on a black field. It looked terrifying as it shadowed the room beneath the table where the small council met. "You kept me waiting." The cracking sound of her brother's petulant tone tore her eyes away from her family's banner and to Aerys himself. He was sitting at the head of the table in a finely carved throne with the etching of the Targaryen sigil on its back and the arms of the seat cut to look like resting dragons. She slipped into a curtsy, repressing the wince that came from the bruise on her thighs from her brother's latest visit. "Your Grace," she allowed herself to raise her head to see his lecherous gaze upon her chest. She swallowed the thick fear that was forming in her throat. Roller understood that look. "He will be visiting me soon." The icy claw squeezed itself around her heart. "Forgive me," she finished in her apology. Aerys waved her off, and pointed to one of the empty chairs at the table. It was the farthest from him. It was said in the times of Queen Alysanne that she sat beside her husband when the small council met. She would help him lead the council and rule the kingdoms. A kind king, and a gentle husband, she wondered how that would feel. Rollo was under no delusions that her and Aerys matched the marriage between the conciliator and the good queen. They may have been brother and sister, like her and Aerys, but they had always desired the other, and had wanted to marry. It had been their family and advisers who were against the match between them. "If only I had been so blessed." She did not complain about her seat or the disrespect that was intended. She curtsied once more before taking her seat. It was when she sat down that she noticed the other occupants sitting at the table. Lord Tywin Lannister was sitting to the king's right. Like the king, the Hand's chair was specially designed to show the symbol of the office carved onto its back. Lord Tywin, having served for so many years, had commissioned the seat to also included a lion engraving to honor his family's house. Standing to the king's left was the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Drold Hightower. Garbed in white silk and steel, he stood resolute as a pale statue. His hair had mostly gone grey, but some specks of black remained. He had a neatly trimmed goatee. His eyes moved across the room when he met the Queen's inquisitive stare. He dipped his head in respect, before continuing to remain alert. Grand Maester Pycelle was sitting on the other side of Lord Tywin Lannister. He smiled politely at her through his thick beard that fell just below his collarbone. He was dressed in the robes of his order, and the links of his chain rested loosely against him. "Mother." She turned to see the only other person who was not in the room sitting was her son, Daeron. He emerged from behind a carved screen. His smile alone was enough to give her courage for being in the same room with her husband. "Daeron," she greeted him with a kiss to his cheek when he neared and bent over. He did not linger. Like her, he did not want to face the scrutiny of their king. So without another word, he moved to take his seat. It was across from Lord Tywin and Grand Maester Pycelle. She took her eyes off of her son and onto Aerys. His face was scrunched up, looking as if he swallowed something particularly sour. His hair was stringy and silver. It fell down in tangled knots past his shoulders. Even the clean rich black silks and red stitches of the finery he wore could not take the attention away from the man's unkempt appearance. His long fingernails tapping the table impatiently. She shuddered, recalling their touch on her skin from his visits. "You should all be grateful that I called you all here." His face was pinched. His eyes turned to each of them, as if half expecting one of them to challenge him. No one did. They were silent. Satisfied at their silence and mistaking it for respect instead of fear, Eris continued. "Lord Tywine, you have served at the pleasure of your king for how long?" Tywine was unfazed by the king's sharp tone. "I have served gratefully, your grace, for 18 years. Eris hummed at that. Grateful? He let out a snicker that sounded more akin to an animal than a man. "And I am grateful for that service." He gave a sharp smile towards his hand of the king. There was a time when her brother valued a smile from Tywine more than any show of power. She could recall how Eris would take pride in getting his friend to smile or laugh at one of his stories. Now, he delivered cruelty and insults. "Do you think your king is kind, Lord Hand?" "I do, your grace." "Liar." Tywine's face was stoic amidst the king's outburst. The king's face calmed, and he smiled. It was not the same smile of his youth, Rolla observed. That smile could melt the hearts of maidens and charm any lord. This was an ugly shadow of its former glory, a puckering of chapped lips and yellow teeth. "I will show you and all the kingdoms that I am a generous king." Eris' eyes darted around the room, daring them to challenge his claim. "Let the realms know that I reward good service." "To serve is its own reward, your grace." Tywine said what was expected to be observed when a gift was offered by the crown. "My Lord Hand." Eris clapped, a cackle followed as he leaned back in his chair. "What a show of honor and loyalty, would you not agree, Lord Commander?" "I agree," your grace. Drold Hightower said from where he stood. Eris looked pleased at what he believed a sincere show of support for him. "That is why I have decided to grant your request, Lord Tywine." His smile sharpened when his words withdrew a reaction from his Lord Hand. "You promised me Summerhall in the exchange of my son." He waved a hand in the direction of Daeron. "So I accept." Summerhall, her heart quickened. Fire and screams, smoke and death, she trembled. The wraiths of those who perished lingered in her heart and thoughts after all these years. The horrors of that night were cuts to her soul that could not mend. Flames and agony whirled around her. Dragons burned, she despaired at all her family lost on that fateful night. "We were brought to near ruin. Roriga," she breathed. It was there amidst the tragedy that her son took his first breath while so many of their kin took their last. Blood was burned. Blood was shed. Blood was spared. She pushed the horrors behind her, focusing on how the Lord of Casterly Rock react. The stony countenance slipped and sincere surprise flickered beneath the golden flecks of his green eyes, and a small, but noticeable smile emerged. He had gotten what he had always aspired for, a union between his family and theirs. "Your Grace." Tywine bowed his head. "I am grateful." Eris waved away his gratitude like it was an annoying insect and not something that should be treated seriously. "I do this because I am a good and strong king," he reminded them. "I do this for Summerhall." His eyes flashed wistful and bright. "It was a magnificent palace and it will be again with your family funding it." He looked back towards Tywine, unveiled contempt in his expression. "We shall see how much gold the lion really has." Tywine took the king's words in cool silence. Rolla did not share Eris' love for that place. She was not certain she wanted to return to it. "It is a graveyard now. The dead dragons have claimed it. Let them have it. Let them rest. And you?" Eris snapped his fingers, turning his gaze on their second son. Father Daeron deferred to him with a bowed head. "Do you understand what I've done?" Daeron looked up. "I am honored to join House Lannister in this union." Rolla could detect the dullness in her son's voice despite his poise and polished tone. She was pleased to see Lord Tywine took his words to be genuine and offered the prince the slightest of nods. "Honor?" Eris looked at him as if he was a fool. "It's no honor to marry a servant, boy." Rolla saw the tension in Lord Tywine's jaw. The flecks in his eyes burning, but the Lord Hand remained composed. He would say and do nothing in front of the king in fear of jeopardizing what he has coveted for so long. We all wear our contempt for you in silence, brother. She turned her attention back towards her son, hoping he knew how to properly react. Careful, my boy, she prayed for him. He was left a difficult task of appeasing his father, but also not insulting Lord Tywine, his future good father. I too am but a servant. Father Daeron seemed to be picking his words with the utmost care. I serve the crown, I serve you. He dipped his head towards him. That is why it is fitting for me to marry Lord Tywine's daughter. If this betrothal is my best way of serving you, then I do so readily, your grace. Rollo was silently pleased at her son's handling of his father's sensitive manner. She looked to see Lord Tywine's face stayed the same, but she knew the Lord Hand long enough to know when he was pleased or angry, just by a look, even one as stoic as this. In seeing him now, she knew that Lord Tywine was accepting of the prince's words. Aerys studied his son with hooded eyes for a few heartbeats, measuring his words silently and trying to see if he was speaking true or trying to deceive him. In the end, he looked mollified. My son knows his place. He nodded. Pycelle. Yes, your grace. Grand Maester Pycelle was surprised at being suddenly called upon. Prepare the appropriate letters to be sent to acknowledge this betrothal, Aerys ordered. I will get to work on this right away, your grace, he replied, with your leave. Leave was Aerys' sharp reply. Pycelle hid his annoyance behind a bowed head and a thick beard. Your grace, he then shuffled out of the chambers. Fool, Aerys complained, when will construction for Summerhall begin, Tywine? In a fortnight, your grace, Tywine answered smoothly. Rollo was surprised at not just the quickness, but the confidence of the Lord Hand's promise. She suspected it to take weeks, even months, before work could start on trying to rebuild the palace of Summerhall. Especially since the Lord Hand was to leave the capital shortly and to return to Casterly Rock to oversee and finish the preparations of the pending wedding between his son and heir, Jaime Lannister, to the Dornish princess, Elia Martell. A fortnight, Aerys griped. Even such incredible haste did not seem to appease their king and his expectations. It is the ravens, your grace, Tywine explained. It takes time for them to fly with the proper instructions to give the orders and to gather the men and materials. Aerys grumbled, but accepted this. Very well, his tone implied the sacrifice he was making for allowing 2 weeks to pass before work could begin. The wedding between my son and your daughter will be held no shorter than a year, and no longer than 3. It will be on my leave and on my seeing how the progress on Summerhall is. His fingernails scratched the table's surface. Of course, your grace, Tywine hid his disappointment behind a calm veneer. You will be glad to be informed that the castle's preparations and constructions will remain a priority for my family. Aerys did not seem glad. If you want to marry my son, it should be. Tywine responded to the king's petulance with indifference. The Lord Hand did not bend to the king's cruelty, like a mountain does not to the wind. No matter how hard the wind blows, the mountain stayed standing, just like Lord Tywine. I may send the appropriate orders now, if I have your leave, your grace. The king sniffed. You do. Tywine stood in one swift movement. He bowed his head to Aerys. His eyes then flickered over to Prince Daeron. The corners of Lord Tywine's lips twitched, appraising the man before him, his future good son. Her son sensed Lord Tywine's gaze and gave the Lord Hand an acknowledged nod. He left after that. Do you understand what I'm giving you, boy? Her husband's voice was a jagged hook that lurched her focus back between her son and brother, a wife and a castle. Thank you, your grace. I'm giving you what I always wanted. His eyes locked onto hers, a sneer followed, a Lannister wife. You were not my choice, brother. She met his gaze for a heartbeat or two, savoring the act of defiance before she bowed her head. She only prayed that it would not cost her later. Jaime. It is done. Jaime had been surprised to be summoned to his father's solar at this hour, expecting him to be busy fulfilling his role as Hand of the King. When he arrived, he found himself more surprised by his father's pleased look and the half-glass of wine resting on his desk. Father. The king has agreed to our proposal, Tywine informed him, satisfaction seeping into his tone. So that means Jaime already knew. Your sister will marry Prince Daeron, Tywine finished. I'm writing the letters now. One for your mother and one for Cersei. He sipped his wine. And then several others to follow to appease the king, but this is a good day. He told Jaime, This is the day that the lion and the dragon will finally unite. A good day, Jaime chorused, wondering how his friend was taking this news. Does the prince know? He was there when he was told. I'm sure he was pleased, Jaime lied. He was, Tywin confirmed, looking at Jaime. Your work, my son. He raised his glass in his direction. Well done, Jaime. Well done serving the family. I did nothing, Jaime wanted to say. I was a craven. He felt little like celebrating despite the fact that his closest friend was to be his good brother. He wished Elia was here. She'd know what to say, and more importantly how to say it. We will leave for the Rock in 2 days, his father's voice cut through his thoughts. This is our time, Jaime. Your marriage to Princess Elia. Cersea's betrothal to Prince Daeron. Our family has never been stronger. He raised his glass to him. Jaime did not want to dwell on his sister's new betrothal. So it was Summerhall. Yes, your mother was right, his father's lips twitched. She saw Aerys' desires and used it for our family's gain. Desires, the word made Jaime sick. The prince was his friend and they cared little for him. It was Rhaegar they wanted, and when denied, they sought his friend. You serve your family, the words of his father swirling in his head while he grappled with its impact. It will be an expensive endeavor, but your mother has run the Rock well, and we have the gold. We will be getting some help from the crown and I will send either Kevan or Geryon to the castle to overlook its rebuild after the wedding. Jaime only nodded. Was there anything else? He did not feel like celebrating with his father. His father regarded coolly. You may go, he acquiesced. I'm sure you will wish to offer your congratulations to the prince. I'd rather apologize than congratulate him, he thought sourly on his own actions. Instead, he gave his father a tight nod and moved towards the door. That was when his father spoke. Your friendship with Prince Daeron is admirable. Jaime's hand was on the doorknob. Even if I didn't do it for the family. He was surprised by his own boldness. His surprise only grew when his father reacted to it with a smile. We must serve our family, Jaime. His father said slowly. Just as Joanna was right about Aerys. You were right about the prince. It was you who told me of Prince Daeron's virtues. You were right with every one of them. You saw his quality when I and Cersei did not. You served the family. Is that all, father? His grip on the doorknob tightened. A reminder that our family will soon include Prince Daeron. He will be your good brother, his father observed. So remember my words and your loyalty to family. I will. Jaime noticed the different inflection his father made when speaking of Prince Daeron and family. He nodded, and slipped out, wanting to find his friend, but he couldn't help but wonder what it was his father wasn't saying. Notes. Betrothed already. You're probably thinking that was easy and simple. And maybe it was, but this was always the plan I had in mind. Besides, we still got a long road to travel between them. There's sure to be some bumps. And Cersei will need Elia, Jaime and others, just like it was hinted at before they were betrothed. The wedding between Elia and Jaime is still a few chapters away. This chapter was always going to focus more on Roller's part for obvious reasons, and a dash of Jaime seemed better to handle the aftermath. While Daeron and Cersei would need meteor reactions which should appear next chapter, and we'll get more Jaime too. If you can spare a few minutes, please leave a comment. That people took time to let me know their thoughts and feelings. I'm not always able to respond to your comments, but I read and appreciate all of them. Thanks for the support. Spectre for Hire. Chapter 18, Council. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. 280 AC. Daeron. The Lady Cersei Lannister is a beauty, his mother remarked casually. She is. He'd be a blind fool to deny that fact. He had seen her countless times, and was aware of it. The thought of her stirred little lust in him, but plenty of bitterness. Father had been kind enough to excuse mother and himself. He was escorting her back to her chambers upon her request. Sers Barristan and Alisa were trailing them like two pale shadows. Do you have plans of becoming a Septon or a Maester? He smiled at his mother's jape. He looked over to see her smiling at being able to get a reaction out of him. He had been content to be silent. I'm sorry, mother. She deserved more than his quiet contemplation, but this was all so unexpected. This morning he was a prince without a castle or a wife, and now his father had given him both, but he was more wary than happy. You are a good boy. Her hand touched his cheek. She is blessed to be able to call you husband someday. No, she isn't, he wanted to correct. Cersei Lannister did not want him. She had only eyes for his brother. I am nothing but a consolation and a disappointment. Her choice was my brother, but instead she got me. The bitterness churned in his gut. You were given a castle and a wife. I asked for neither. He knew he sounded flippant, but his annoyance was starting to rise. Not at his mother, but at the situation his father had put them in. He should have been pleased. This was more than he ever hoped to have. Daeron had been resigned to his fate. He understood it would be tied to the generosity of first his father and then his brother when he ascends to the throne. Even amidst these gifts his father gave him, he could not ignore the poison in which they were wrapped in. A woman who chose his brother, and a castle that his father and Rhaegar desired. Summerhall, he knew some of its history. He had never gone to see its ruins. That had been his brother's place to dwell. Daeron cared little of it. The castle was just another thing that my brother had picked over me. It was a long list. How many times had he seen Rhaegar ride to those ruins? He wondered. I wanted to ride with him. I wanted to get him to stay to play, but he had always declined. The memories of those rejections were hard to stomach, so he buried them. Your father is being generous. He wanted to scoff. He ignored the temptation. This was the Red Keep. The eunuch had eyes and ears behind the walls and under the floors. This was for our king, Daeron said carefully. He had heard father lament its fall more times than he could count. The smouldering castle meant more to his father and his brother than Daeron ever thought it could mean to him. And it is me who will take it as my seat. He found that equal parts amusing and annoying. How often will I have to host them? He feared with it rebuilt, they'd flock to it often. It will be my castle in name, and theirs in everything else. She sent him a warning look at what he said, and her grip on his arm became firmer. They rounded a corner in silence. The corridor was empty. Princess Lila is pregnant, he murmured. If it is a boy. I drop down in the line of succession. This did not bother him. The throne was for Rhaegar and Daeron was to remain in the shadows. I am a glorified hedge knight without the knighthood, he observed dryly. He stopped to see mother was watching him closely. Her eyes were sharp, and beneath that gaze was a sharper mind, despite father's attempts to dull it with cruelty and malice. Father gets his castle paid for by the lions, he said quietly. And he has Tywin bound to our family without threat or a chance of the Lannisters claiming the throne. These are dangerous words, Daeron. The warning in her voice was clear. They were nearing her chambers. I am an anchor to sink the Lannisters' ambitions. I'm nothing more than gilded chains to clasp a lion and to stop its reach. You are more than that. He gave her a sad smile. This is where I leave you, mother. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to her cheek. Daeron felt her searching eyes, but he would not meet her gaze. Goodbye, my son. She accepted his choice, but parting words from your mother. He had already turned to go. His back was to her, but he nodded. If all you look for is sadness and slights, then you will never stop finding them. Move forward, instead of looking back. Daeron left after that. This is great news, cousin. Daeron had needed Robert's enthusiasm and company after his meeting with his father and his talk with his mother. So he had sent for him before returning to his chambers. The cousins were sitting in his solar, sharing a bottle of some sweet wine that Robert had brought with him. The wine was as welcomed as his cousin. You'll be in the Stormlands with me. Robert was grinning from across the table. Do not worry, I'll be a good and fair lord to you. He let out a loud laugh afterwards. Daeron found his cousin's mood infectious, feeling his own smile slipping through, and a chuckle followed. About bloody time. Robert saw it too. I was beginning to think you were Ned with just silver hair. Is that such a bad thing? Robert wagged a finger at him, a low rumbling sound followed. Clever, cousin, but I will not fall for that trap. Daeron hid his smile behind his glass as he drained the rest of his in one sip. He put the empty glass down. Robert poured him another without hesitation. You are marrying a beautiful woman. He shook his head, and yet you act as if you're about to become a eunuch like our Lord Varys. There's an image, Daeron muttered into his cup. Cersei Lannister. Robert let out a whistle that was common for him when he was near sultry wenches and pretty serving maids. I am blessed, Daeron said dully as he drank to his future wife. Her image flickered in front of him, long golden hair, emerald eyes, with pale skin and high cheekbones. It was a pretty sight, but he could not ignore her voice. Her whispers of Rhaegar. Her simpering for his brother. Her prayers for the prince. He frowned. His grip on the glass tightening before he banished her from his thoughts altogether. I'm marrying a woman who'd rather be Rhaegar's second wife than my only one. You're not still thinking about... No, Daeron cut him off before he could continue. He sent him a warning look to drop that particular topic. Very well, Robert understood, holding up his hands to placate him. I'm just trying to understand this. You will not understand, he interrupted. Not unless your wife or betrothed chooses someone else instead of you. And I do not wish that on you, cousin. Robert's blue eyes looked at him closely, lips pursed. He looked to be in deep thought, or trying to will Daeron's secrets to spring up like one draws water from a well. When Daeron met his stare with silence, Robert relented with a purr and drank from his glass. There is some good news to glean from this, he said. Mayhaps, Ned will get his pretty Dornish maiden. Daeron did not begrudge his friend that. He knew how much Ned cared for the Lady Ashera. He had been determined that if any betrothal between him and the Maiden of Starfall be made, that he'd sooner leave for Essos than honor it. I'm tied to a lion, but at least the wolf gets his star. Indeed, he agreed to his friend's observation. I'd send him a letter, but we'd reach him at Casterly Rock before any raven. Now that he's traveling through the north. Robert voiced his agreement. He'll be told the truth while also having her near, he said with a sly smile. He saw the truth in Robert's words. The timing was a blessing for their northern friend and the Dornish maiden he wished to court. They'll be together at Casterly Rock. Mayhaps another betrothal can be forged in the fires of their friend's wedding. Speaking of betrothals, Robert sat straighter in his seat. There is something I wanted to talk to you about, cousin. Oh. Daeron was surprised at how quickly his friend's mood sobered. You know Ned went to Winterfell on his knot, he continued. He's bringing his sister with him for the wedding. Robert licked his lips after taking another sip from his glass. His eyes held a certain glaze to them at the mention of Ned's sister. Lyanna, he said quietly. She's a real she-wolf, he laughed at unsaid memories. You want to pursue her? Daeron was surprised. He had suspected Robert to marry a noblewoman from the Stormlands. Mayhaps, the Reach or possibly Dorne, but he never thought Robert had eyes for a northern bride. Robert took Daeron's surprise poorly. You think it a poor match? He grumbled, looking down into his glass, crestfallen. No, Daeron hastily corrected. I did not say that. I am just surprised, he clarified. I did not think you were casting such a large net for a potential wife. Robert slumped in his seat, relieved at his answer. Neither was I until my trip to Winterfell, he revealed. She was fierce. She rides like she's half horse, he smiled. Think on it, cousin. A wife I could go hunting with. He brightened at the idea that was clearly being conjured in his head. Daeron knew how much Robert enjoyed riding and hunting. There was never a visit he took to see him at Storm's End when they didn't hunt. And when Robert and Ned visited him in the capital, he always insisted on a hunt in the Kingswood or rides out to the Blackwater. He was glad someone was excited about their possible betrothal. Have you talked to Ned? Robert made a face that clearly conveyed he had not. I want to, he said. And I will, he added, but I just wanted to speak on it with someone else before bringing it to him and the rest of the Starks. I am honored, cousin. Daeron meant it, tipping his head to him before taking a measured sip of his wine. The sweet taste was soothing, and the warmth he felt was welcomed. The Starks are an old family, Robert, he pointed out. You should think carefully on this. They are not one to insult. Insult? Robert repeated. His tone mimicked the thunder of a storm. How would I insult them? You have a bastard daughter. Daron did not blink to his cousin's rage. He was not sure if it was the wine that made him bold or his own misery. Maya is a sweet girl, Robert growled in warning, angered at her being thrown at him as a slight. And I was not betrothed when I had her. He rolled his eyes. He thought it a flimsy excuse, and a poor shield since Robert hid behind what Daron was really saying. So once you are betrothed to Lady Lyanna, you'll turn your head away from every wench that comes your way. Daron knew his words were cutting deep, but they needed to be said. Even when she's in the north and you remain in the south, alone and unfettered. You'll not tumble with any servants. Father, any more bastards. Careful, cousin, when you speak about honor. Robert's voice had gone dangerously low. You're the one who fucked a woman who was betrothed, not I. Daron frowned at the reminder. Fair point. He relented. He would not deny it. Or the truth that if given the option again, he'd take it. She's now a red wine. A married woman, and his thoughts still drifted towards her now and then. I never should have told you that. Robert waved away his words with his goblet. Then you shouldn't have shared that bottle with me. Daron wanted to groan at just the memory itself of that ordeal. They had gotten into their cups, and his lips had loosened. He was still secretly reeling from her betrothal and their blissful time in Dawn. In the moment, it seemed a good idea to speak of it. He knew now that was a stomach full of wine talking. When he eventually sobered, he swore Robert not to speak of it to anyone, and his cousin agreed. I am just pointing out observations that will be made by those closest to you if this match is brought forward, Daron told him. Do you not think Lyanna will not talk to Ned about your behavior? He knew he made his point at how his cousin winced. She will ask him, and those uncomfortable truths will come out, cousin. He drained his cup. I know you to be a better man than what those stories will paint. I just caution you at the image you are painting to those who are not given the luxury of your company. Robert sighed. You've given me much to think about. He put his glass down, looking uninterested in what remained. Daron had no such qualms. He grabbed the bottle and poured himself another drink. Mayhaps, when I wake up, this will be some terrible dream. With that encouragement, he took a long sip. You are a good man, Robert. Do not forget that, but also do not hide that. Robert said after mulling on his words for a few seconds. You speak truly, cousin. I am thankful for your counsel. And I am thankful for your friendship. Daron raised his glass to him. He made a face when some of it sloshed out of it and onto the table and his pants. Regardless, he chose to drink before he took the time to try to clean himself up. My prince. Sir Barristan's voice broke through his mirthful haze. Jaime Lannister is here to see you. My future good brother. Daron grinned in amusement towards Robert. Send him in. The door opened to show his friend. My prince. Who will soon be your brother. Daron finished with a sudden laugh. I'm living up to my namesake, he thought wryly, Daron the drunken. You're celebrating. Jaime's observation sounded more like a question. Why shouldn't we? Daron shrugged, turning to Robert, who offered no words, but a nod. Join us. He beckoned his friend closer, share from our bottle and our fellowship. He made room for Jaime to sit down while Robert poured him a glass. Jaime thanked Robert with a nod and took his seat between him and his cousin, who sat on opposite sides of the table. My father told me of this fortunate news. Robert was nursing his drink, but looked more distracted than his previous boisterous self. He had become more reserved. It seemed he was thinking more on words previously said between them than focusing on the ones being shared now. Fortunate indeed, Daron agreed. What else would you call marrying a woman who chose your brother? She wanted Rhaegar and now must settle for me. His smile soured. The mirth snuffed to the growing snarl he felt burning within. He felt his lips twist in bitterness. I'm marrying a woman who'd prefer to be Rhaegar's second wife than my only one. He laughed, but it was not a joyous noise. It was sad and frail. It was weak, he thought, and he despised the sound. Memories of a boy came churning upwards. Knocking on a door, calling for his brother. A wooden sword in his hand, pleading that this was the day he promised to play with him. He had hardly slept. He had been so excited that he had agreed to finally close one of his books and be with him. The door opened. It was not a dragon that answered but a white sword, looking down in pity. "I'm sorry, my prince." The voice was low and his face was stern, "but your brother cannot come. He is busy." "He promised," the boy squeaked. "He is not to be disturbed." The white sword answered. He found a new passage that he must study. The white sword then bowed his head, and closed the door without another word. The tears slipped down his cheeks as he stared at the door. "My prince," came a soft voice. It was the white sword who was bound to him that day. "You will come to the training yard with me." "Truly?" He scrubbed the tears from his cheeks. The white sword smiled, "Yes, if you are to one day be my squire, then I have much to teach you." Cousin Robert's loud voice pulled him out of a memory he long buried. Of a small and sad boy whose only friends were swords and shadows. "I wanted a brother, but he didn't want me." Yes, he tried to recover. He was no longer feeling the warm, comforting fog that made him feel lighter and happier. It was as if a wet blanket had been wrapped around him. He looked down at his glass and put it on the table. The desire to drink dampened quickly. Daeron looked up to see the worried looks of Robert and Jaime. "These are my brothers. These bonds are stronger than Valyrian steel." "You are right about my sister," Jaime agreed, "and she's a fool because of it." He smiled, touched at his friend's endorsement. Jaime took a sip from his glass. "She chose the wrong prince, but in the end she got the better one." Robert chorused his agreement. "He speaks true, cousin. Rhaegar is the crown prince, but you're our preferred prince. You are a true friend and a good man." "Thank you," he mumbled, touched by their words. He felt his cheeks go warm at their praise. He leaned back in his seat. "So tell me true, Jaime. How thankful should I be to one day be able to call your sister, my wife?" "Cersei can be difficult," Jaime answered delicately, which got a guffaw from Robert. "I was trying to celebrate his betrothal," Lannister Robert's deep voice cut in, "not make him miserable." "She made a mistake," Jaime said softly. "My sister will see that," Jaime pressed. "She could be good for you. You just have to give her a chance. She can be happy and so can you from this match." Daeron frowned. He doubted Cersei would be anything but disappointed in their betrothal. So he paused to reflect on where he found himself. "I'll have a wife that desires my brother, and a brother who covets my castle." He looked out at the table towards his friends. "Am I missing anything?" "Cersei." Casterly Rock was bustling. Mother had servants frantically moving around the rock helping to prepare the Lannister castle. The pending wedding of her brother and the Dornish princess was fast approaching. The gossip was that this was the largest and most extravagant wedding that the Rock had ever seen. Servants, Cersei soured, what do they know? Idle hands and wagging tongues, she thought when it came to this talk. Father will surely spare no expense when it came to her eventual wedding. After all, she was to marry a dragon. That's what father had promised her. That's what mother had planned for her. Let the servants gawk at this light fare that they consider extravagant. While the union between the dragon and the lion will surpass the golden wedding. It will shine over everything before it and diminish anything after it. Let all the 7 kingdoms see and be in awe when their wedding would show the might of the lion and the grandiose of the dragon. There had still been no news from the capital, but that did not bother her. Mother had been confident that the king would take Summerhall in exchange for a union. Cersei, her brother's voice pulled her from her musings. She looked up to see her young brother, a boy of 7. He was standing and being measured by tailors from Lannisport to fit him with new clothes for their brother's wedding. He was wearing a red doublet with a roaring lion stitched into it with golden thread woven along the fabric. "You look so handsome, sweeterling," she cooed, seeing his cheeks turn red and his chest puff at her praise. She smiled at him, but her eyes turned to the tailors to see how they'd react. Would they sneer at her words and mock her brother? Let them try. The audacity angered her, and her gaze did not leave them for the heartbeats that followed her words. To her satisfaction, they said nothing. Expressions that were furrowed in concentration and not one to mock or insult. Good, satisfied, Cersei's fingers touched the golden bracelet adorning her wrist. It had been her latest name-a-day gift from Tyrion. She looked down to see the golden chain and with it were 5 finely carved lions. "They're us," Tyrion told her happily when she had opened it. Your pride, he'd go on to explain. So even if you leave the rock. His face crumpled at that thought, and she had kissed his cheeks to comfort him, overwhelmed by his thoughtful gift. That had bolstered him to continue. We'll always be with you, he finished proudly. It's wonderful, she had told him, gushing over it and him, much to his delight. But if I recall, these are meant to be worn, she reminded him. Her smile growing when his mismatched eyes lit up in understanding. He then took the bracelet and gently clasped it to her wrist, looking pleased when it was finished. She looked down to admire it then, and thanked him with her words and another kiss. My sweetest lion, she praised. Circea knew her mother's fingerprints were on the gift, and seeing her face when it was given confirmed it. However, she knew it was all from Tyrion's heart. He inspired it, and thought of it. Mother just had the means to bring it to existence, but it was all Tyrion. You will be the most handsome lion in attendance. Tyrion preened, really? Yes. Circea would not let his doubt linger even for a heartbeat. You must promise me a dance. I'm certain many maidens will seek you out. Tyrion blushed at the thought, before he mustered the discipline to look serious. I promise, he vowed, you can have as many dances as you want with me. Circea grinned, perfect, because I'll want several. Her fingers were touching the littlest lion on the bracelet. Thank you for being so generous. Do we know when Jaime will be arriving? I do not know, sweeterling. She saw his face fall. But we will get a letter from father when they depart the capital. It should be any day. Pleased to see Tyrion cheer up at her words. They'll be traveling with Prince Daeron. This may be her brother's wedding, but Circea knew the importance of ingratiating herself with the prince to help smoothly secure a betrothal between them. Are you certain? She had asked her mother one night. Circea could not sleep. Doubt had coiled itself in her heart like an agitated serpent. As I can be, was her mother's measured response. I do know that Aerys spent many nights at the royal palace, attending and hosting feasts and tournaments. He had been devastated at its destruction. That had comforted her only a little. It spoke of Aerys' desires, but not of her own target. Mother sensed that. Summerhall will ensnare the king to our goal, my sweeterling, but it is up to you win the prince's favor. And that's what worried Circea. She could not forget Princess Elia's words that were given to her when she had been in Dorne last year. He knows you favor his brother over him. Elia warned him. He will not forget that. Then something like a sad smile passed over the Dornish princess' features, and I'm uncertain if he will forgive that. I had no choice, she argued hotly. It was not fair. She was following father's instructions. She could not be punished for that. You wanted Rhaegar well before father's honeyed words were poured in your ear, a small voice whispered inside her. You wanted him then. You want him now. Elia regarded her sympathetically. I will help you, but this will be no easy task. Betrothed or not, the prince is not a man to forgive slights against him, especially those made to favor Rhaegar. Circea sighed. Her time in Dorne had been a defeat. The prince had not stayed more than a week after she arrived. He left with his friends, Robert and Ned. First to the Stormlands, and then his friends went on to the Eyrie, with the prince receiving an invitation from House Arryn to stay as well. Jaime would join them after his time with Elia, but Circea had no way of following. Disheartened, she returned to the Rock with her brother. Disappointed that she had failed her parents again when it came to winning over a prince's affection. She pushed away those dull thoughts and memories. I am a lioness, she reminded herself. I will not fail my family and my house. If it is a dragon they want, then I shall deliver it. If I had more time with him, then I'd have him. She was certain of it. Despite her future good sister's caution, Circea could not help but think it should be easy for her to crack once she has the dragon here at the Rock. How could he resist her? There she saw her reflection in the looking glass that the tailors were using to measure and examine her youngest brother. In seeing her, she felt the doubt melt away to be replaced by hardened confidence. Why should I not be confident? She was a beautiful woman now. Her 6 and 10 name a day had passed only a few weeks ago. Everyone remarks on my beauty, at how lovely I am, and men are such base creatures. She thought, feeling the lustful gazes in the eyes of many when she came into view. He'll look at me and all will be forgiven and forgotten. Prince will be thankful to have me at his side when he sees me. He will consider himself blessed to call me his wife. And to lie with me. Her cheeks grew hot at the wicked image that came to her, stirring her own desires. Her reflection looked back at her with a flushed face and a light gleam in her green eyes. I will charm him with my beauty, seduce him, she decided. She'd have the time. The guests would be here for days for the wedding, and she'd be the lovely host to accommodate him. How could he refuse me? She wanted to scoff at the mere thought. It felt insulting. She knew her friends told her caution and that he would be fickle, but she pushed those aside the more she thought about her own plan. Yes, the more she thought about it the more she knew that she had the truth of it, not them. They will all see at the wedding. I have the means to ensnare this prince. Running a hand through her golden hair, she saw the merits of her plan. Words are wind, and when I'm in his gaze, he'll forget all about these supposed slights against him. I'm worthy to be a queen, meant for a crown prince, and you will be getting a bride that will outshine your brothers. She smiled, satisfied at how it will go for her. I shall sink my claws into him and he'll never know it. She almost wanted to laugh, looking back at the doubt she displayed. That she'd allow to linger in her heart. I was foolish, she decided, a second of fear, nothing more. She felt her confidence swell with what she was set to achieve. I will show them all my worth. The tailors were finished. They were talking amongst themselves. She dismissed them and instructed them on where to go for payment. Come, Tyrion, she held out her hand, helping his stunted legs off of the stool and steps he had been standing on. He took it, allowing her to help him down. When they were done she looked down at him and smiled, seeing his mismatched eyes looking up at her in return. I pity Jaime, she told him. Tyrion's face scrunched up. What do you mean? She pinched his cheek, eliciting a giggle from him. It's his wedding, but you'll be so finely dressed and handsome. She tried to smooth his coarse unruly hair with her hand. You'll have all the ladies wanting to marry you instead. I don't want to distract them from Jaime. Tyrion's eyes betrayed that he liked the idea of the attention, but they dimmed with guilt. His free hand fidgeting at his side. The sincerity in his words were touching. Jaime is so fortunate to have you as a brother. Tyrion grinned. And me as well, she added, his smile only widened with her declaration. Now come, it is time for your lessons. He went without protest. Cersei regarded her reflection, which was smiling back at her. Her confidence bolstered. Her certainty was firm. She went to rejoin her brother, thinking that he'll someday be getting a new and royal brother. And that thought had her smiling the entire way. It was done. She was giddy beyond belief at the happy news brought to her from the capital, from her father. Mother had given her the news with a warm smile, and a letter from father which she read hungrily, looking for affection and compliments in the words and between them. Afterwards, mother allowed her a glass of wine to celebrate the good fortune that was her betrothal to Prince Daeron Targaryen. I'm the first, she thought exultingly later that night in her chambers. I will be the first Lannister tied to the Targaryens. Her chest swelled with pride at the feat she accomplished. Servants and guards alike had congratulated her, and given their compliments about the betrothal. Mother wanted the news to spread as quickly as it could. She had riders go out to Lannisport to get heralds to announce so that all could hear about the betrothal between her and the prince. Mother knew the way to the people's heart. She had sent gold along too. To ensure that denizens of Lannisport had wine and ale to raise to toast to Tywin Lannister's daughter's good fortunes. A small bag of gold to us, mother had told her, but to them they'll not forget. Let them know that when the lion prospers so do them. Mother had also allowed some for those inside Casterly Rock to partake. Thanking them for their hard work in preparing for the wedding and to let them rest and revel in the news of Cersei's betrothal. She put aside the small folk and servants who were beneath her. This was not their day. It was hers. I'm to be a princess. She felt as if her heart was spinning in delight. A princess of Summerhall. Father had gotten her a prince and a castle. She was so ecstatic she giggled at what was ahead of her. It shall be splendid, she would make sure of it. I'll have it be the jewel of the South, she thought dreamily. The best feasts and tournaments, lords and knights from all over would come to bask in the glory and gold of Summerhall. They will see the dragon and the lion and know our worth. Conjured images of Targaryen dragon and Lannister lion banners flapping above a spectacle castle that would serve as their seat. Summerhall will be the envy of every knight and lady in all the 7 kingdoms. She was so giddy she was nearly dizzy. Collapsing onto her 4-poster bed, and grinning up at the red tapestry above her. My children will be princes and princesses, she relished it. The betrothal is set. She had been told that would be the more challenging task. What lay ahead of her would be simple. The prince will see Summerhall and myself, and be thankful of the importance and gifts given to him by my family. He is pleasing to look at, recalling the hard, muscled figure from her time in Dorne. She dispelled a breath and a contented sigh followed. It's his eyes, lilac and lovely. She thought of princes with golden hair and lilac eyes, and she smiled. His pride will give way, she told herself. He'll see me, and his desires and lust have him forgetting all about his wounded pride. I am too enticing to ignore. Cersei. She propped her head up at the sound of her brother's voice. Come in, Tyrion. The door opened to show her littlest brother. Mother told me about your betrothal. Did she? Cersei regarded her brother, trying to read his mood. The only shadow in her light had been her fears at how her brother would react. He bobbed his head up and down. I'm happy for you. His smile was faltering. She was moving in an instant to him. What is it, sweeterling? She hugged him. You'll be moving, he hiccoughed. She could feel his small body shaking in her arms. Not for a while, she soothed him, running her hands up and down her back. I'll still be here with you, she assured him. And you'll always be welcomed at Summerhall. Really? The hope in his voice made her heart tremble as if he had doubted it. Of course she silenced whatever doubt he allowed to build in his frail heart. He worried so much because what he looked like. Letting it fester and root within him. Do not ever think differently. She leaned back so she could see his face. His mismatched eyes glistened in the firelight. Tears marred his face, and she wiped them away with her fingers. I will, he promised. Good, she kissed his cheek. And when I'm not here, she saw how his mouth parted with distraught. She pushed forward. Jaime will be here. Really? He sniffed. She knew how much Tyrion missed Jaime ever since their brother moved to the capital. Yes, she affirmed. He'll be the Lord of Casterly Rock after father, and he'll need to get more familiar with what that means. I can help him. Tyrion's face lit up. Cersei smiled. He'd be so thankful for it, she told him. The words were on her tongue, but she hesitated, her selfishness trying to push them away, but her love for her brother triumphed her own feelings. Princess Elia too. She would not let Tyrion's happy reaction be any form of condemnation on her. She is to be Jaime's wife and Lady of the Rock. She will be living here with us. It was difficult to say, but she said them for Tyrion. Her own misgivings on the Dornish princess were ebbing away. She found herself having little to say against Elia anymore. The fact that she was kind and lovely to her youngest brother did her favors in Cersei's eyes. The words only brought a new smile to Tyrion's face. His mismatched eyes were sparkling in conjured thoughts of having Elia here at the Rock permanently. She would be lying to herself if she said it did not sting, even slightly, his reaction. Her wounded pride aside, it did give her comfort in knowing that when she left the Rock for Summerhall, Elia would be here to look after Tyrion. Notes. So you asked for their reactions, and here they are. I hope you liked them and / or found them believable to their characters and where they are right now in the story. Thanks for the tremendous support you continue to show me and this story. I greatly appreciate it. Spectre for Hire. Chapter 19, Guests. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. 280 AC. Daeron. Casterly Rock was as impressive as he remembered. The last time I traveled here, my betrothed had eyes only for my brother. That betrothed was now currently leading him to his chambers. Viserys was at his side, taking in all the glittering gold that the Lannisters had to offer. It was an impressive sight down these corridors to awe and humble those who were guests of Casterly Rock. A show of fortune and force of what the mighty Lannister lions could do. He could feel her eyes were on him, but a selfish part of him refused to acknowledge it or her. Having only just arrived to the Rock with the Lannister party, Lord Tywine had not so subtly positioned his daughter as Daeron's host. He would not forget Robert's grin and wink before she ushered him and Viserys down the corridors. The armored footfalls of the Kingsguard knights that his father had sent him. To his surprise, he decided to send 3, Sirs Barristan, Arthur, and Quain. His father had been clear of his intentions when he gave the orders to Lord Commander Hightower. We must show strength. This may be a Lannister wedding, but the dragon lingers in no lion's shadow. It was not lost on Daeron that father had elected to choose some of the most prestigious knights that the Kingsguard had ever known. The sound of his brother's babbling brought him back to see Viserys and his betrothed were talking about the Lannister castle. He glanced over at Cersei Lannister to see she was beautiful in red silk with golden thread. It clung to her body to accentuate her and to tease what lay beneath the cloth. Her dress was low-cut that allowed a glimpse of pale breasts. Her green eyes sparkled and her smile made her already pretty face breathtaking. In sight of such beauty, he felt very little lust stir within him. It was more a twitch, like a wiggling worm, and not the burning flames when he had been with Minor. She wants your brother, the voice inside him said. Her choice was not you. Never you, it would mock him, feasting on his fears like a glutton at a banquet. It is Rhaegar that is who she wants. That's who they all want. Daeron stewed silently on the barbed truth of these words that stubbornly coiled itself around him. He tried to push them from his mind. He found his distraction by watching how she was with Viserys. She can be kind and gentle, he observed, but was it genuine or false, he did not know. Viserys was enamored by all of it, specks of gold would leave his mouth agape. His eyes glimmering as they took in all this opulence. He could not fault his brother. All he knew was the Red Keep. And the keep was many things, but it was not as inspiring or as glamorous as other castles throughout Westeros. It's all new to him. The wonders of the Rock remain impressive. Daeron knew he could not stay quiet during the entire escort. He looked over to see his betrothed wearing a proud smile. He saw the golden lion necklace adoring her neck, resting just above the chest to draw in the eye. My prince's words are humbling. He did not miss the seductive inflections in her voice. Her jade eyes looking at him with a smile. She's beautiful, but what is behind that veneer? He wondered, will I be disappointed or pleased? So you're going to be my sister one day? Viserys' voice caused her to turn away from him. To her credit, her smile remained, and Viserys' cheeks turned slightly red at being at the center of it. I am her tone happy and excited. I've always wanted another brother. Viserys only turned redder at that. Truly. Truly, she tapped his nose and he giggled. She then stood back up, but not before looking at Daeron from her position, which was deftly done to give him a generous view down her dress. His eyes never left hers after the initial flicker. The stare between them ended when they arrived at Viserys' chambers. My prince, here you are. She offered him her hand, which he eagerly took as servants curtsied to them while the doors were open and waiting. Sir Arthur Daeron turned to his brother's best friend. You shall make sure my brother settles in. You will then escort him to the feast tonight. The sword in the morning's eyes turned to Barristan first, before he nodded, very well, my prince. Cersei, who had been quietly watching, smiled when his eyes turned to her. Shall we? Let's. He offered her his arm out of obligation, but she took it eagerly. They walked silently and he was thankful. It was not compliments or idle chatter that surfaced up in her presence, but accusations and questions, but he was not foolish enough to give voice to them. Then it came to him, a memory of a similar encounter between them. Him escorting her to her chambers at the Tower of the Hand. He had stopped his father from doing something foolish and perverse to the Hand's daughter. He would not forget her fear, but there had been a strength that shone in her eyes, brighter than any emerald. A challenging hue, as if to dare him to say she was afraid. A fire that burned hotter than dragon flame, he remembered thinking. Now she walks with him, almost a different woman before him. This one who was ditzy and provocative. Before there was a fierceness he couldn't help but admire. He found himself disappointed in the change. You are quiet, my prince. Her words were softly spoken, and a touch of sadness lilted her words. If it was sincere or not, he was not sure. I am tired. He patted her hand. I apologize for being such poor company. He smiled, hoping it appeared reassuring and not strained. She returned it. Relief seemed to flicker in her eyes. Then she nodded in understanding. Yes, it can be a long journey. Indeed, Daeron did not want to appear rude. She is to be my wife. The voice was dull, but truthful. I was lost in a memory. Oh. Her curiosity sounded genuine. Yes, he silently measured whether he should repeat it, considering the ordeal it must have been for her. It was the after though, after his father had been led away. That was what he wanted to share. When he had offered her the chance to hold